It begins. It's happening now, and you're here for it. It's the Sunday show after dark. Sorry, but that's what it is. Welcome to this channel, to this show. My name is Forrest Valkai, and I am joined today by the beautiful Paulogia. How are you today, good sir?
I am all right. And to your point, whatever it was you thought you were tuning in for, this will be better than whatever it was you thought. This is going to be great.
We'll see how far I can drag this show down. We got a great show for everybody today. Lines are already open, 720-619-2288, or use the web call in the description. This is a great show for anybody who is a theist or a creationist or somebody who has some supernatural claims of some kind, to talk to skeptics, to talk to atheists, to talk to humanists, and to actually have their beliefs challenged a little bit, and to challenge our beliefs as well. If this is something you haven't seen before, it's just a call-in show. It's a place to have conversations. Calls go as pleasantly as the callers allow them to, usually. And we're here to talk to you about what you believe and why. So if you have any kind of a supernatural belief, gods, angels, demons, fairies, big feats, I don't know, whatever other kind of thing, especially usually gods, or what people call them about, especially usually the Christian God or the Muslim God or whatever else. If you're one of the big religions out there and you want to talk about what you believe and why, or if you're a science denier of any kind, if you're a flat earther or an anti-vaxxer or a transphobe or a creationist or a whatever the anti-Big Bang would be, this is your chance to call in and talk to people who share very different beliefs than you, and to enrich your life and experience with new ideas, and to have your faith challenged. It's a lot of fun for anybody who wants to participate. It's been happening for a long time. So take your opportunity now. Call in. Tell us what things you believe in and why you believe in them, and we'll have a conversation about it. Paul, what's going on with you, amigo mio? How's your channel? How's your family? How's your life? What's going on with you?
Well, I'm still recovering because Shannon and I, my partner Shannon Q, who's a co-host on the line here as well, we do our annual New Year's Day. We get drunk and we watch Ken Ham videos. And it's now just like it's a couple days later. I'm still just kind of recovering from all of that, but that'll be posted soon on my channel. But, that's our New Year's punishment, frankly. It's fun tradition.
I just suffered through an Answers in Genesis video myself. I'm releasing a new Reacteria this month, and this one is Calvin Smith, who is the head of Answers in Genesis Canada.
I've spoken to him in person. Yep.
Yeah. He is more articulate than Ken Ham, and yet somehow no less wrong. But it's just the man is making really, really just silly claims about debunking the proofs of evolution. And doing a bad job at it. So that video will be out later this month, as will New Sex and Sensibility. Those scripts are completely fully written, and I just have to record them and finish them up. The Sex Sensibility script took a lot longer than I thought. I was trying to have that out by the end of the year, but I had the script finished, and then I added 5 more pages to it, and then I added 5 more pages to it, and it just kept going. And so now I've got like this 32-page monster. And I've already cut so much out. Like, there's so much more that I wanted to put in there that I didn't, because I was like, this is already overwhelming for the audience. I've got to stop. Like, this has to be enough. And so be sure to check out the really cool resource list. I'm going to put the citation list as the bibliography in a document.
I didn't realize as a YouTuber that I was going to be writing so many reports, but literally every week it's like writing a report, and with the full citations and all that stuff.
Yes, and that's my life was going to go this way. I have so many friends that are like other kinds of creators, and they're like, no, I just brainstorm like 10 videos on a Monday. I record them all on a Tuesday. I put them out through the rest of the week, and I get 10 billion views, and I make $1 bazillion. And I'm like, wow, That sounds great. You don't have to read 30 fucking textbooks per video.
Right.
Wow. You don't have to go back and fact check your fact checking every time and make sure that you were right before and now. That's amazing. Like, wow. It's so different.
We made poor life choices.
Yep. Yeah, we decided to become, this kind of YouTuber and not any other kind. Oh man.
It's because we like truth. So call in if you got it.
Yeah, it's flip, dude. If I wanted to, we could if we could find one really good skit and do it 10 billion times on TikTok.
That's right.
And just change the text on the screen, but do the exact same skit over and over. We'd be famous. We'd be rich. It'd be easy.
Amazing.
But it just so happens
speaking of the YouTubes,
yeah.
I was going to speak of the YouTubes. It's my understanding that the channel that we are on now, has recently crossed we recently crossed the 150,000 subscribers.
You fucking nerds out there hitting subscribe. Look at you. Shame on you. No, that's fantastic. That's great.
So thank you to everyone. And if you are not one of them, you should probably tap on that button there. Because that's what YouTubers say, right? I almost, I never say that on my own videos.
I love saying, smash that subscribe button in an ironic way. Anytime something genuinely stupid happens, smash that subscribe button because it's just so silly. But honestly, if I said it more, maybe I'd have more subs. I don't know. Make sure to subscribe to the line, and then also go subscribe to Paul, and then also go subscribe to me, and also everybody else that you like. It's hard to explain, but as a professional content creator, subscribing to a channel is so unbelievably helpful and so unbelievably free. I would love if everybody watching this would go join my Patreon. I would love if everybody watching this would go buy a t-shirt. I would love if everybody watching this go become a channel member. That's all great. But it is free and unbelievably helpful to just go subscribe because it really does boost your algorithmically. It makes you more money. It helps you grow as a creator. It helps your career grow. So, if you are not a professional creator, it's difficult to explain, and it's not worth the time on this show to try. But holy crap, dude, go subscribe. It's a lot of fun. And it's fun and cool, and it helps people out when you care about their channels. With that, we've already got some calls coming in. However, at this point, we don't have any theist calls. So we've got it looks like 2-3 calls waiting on the line right now. All of them are non-theists. So if you're a theist out there, we got lines open for you. That number on the bottom of the screen, 720-619-2288, or use the web link in the description. We always prioritize theist calls, so if you call in, we will take your call immediately. But for right now, do you have a particular preference between the two here in the queue?
They're both from Canada, so it's all good.
Okay.
Either way.
Let's talk to Aspen. Pronouns they, them, calling in from right up there in Canada, who's an atheist who is struggling to reconcile their ambiguous Christian upbringing with their Christian friends and their beliefs, looking for advice. This is something that we handle all the time here on the line. So Aspen, welcome to the line. You're on with Forrest and Paul. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you just fine.
Perfect. Anyway, that's basically what the topic says is what I'm calling in about. I'm a university student and I have friends from a lot of walks of life, but in particular, some of them are Christian, and some of the interactions I have with them cause me to, question the validity or the merits of a friendship, and I'd like to reconcile that. And you guys, well, Forrest, you're a scientist, a biologist, and Paul, you're Canadian, so I figure you're two things that I can relate to in a way.
Yeah. Paul, do you want to start? Because I definitely got some thoughts, but
well, I guess I'd love to hear more about how it's impacting you. So for me, ending a friendship, so if anyone isn't a positive influence in your life, that's one thing, and you can choose to allot to them however much time. That's entirely up to you. No one can demand your time, but I would love to hear more about what impact this is having on you, and the nature of these relationships. I'm assuming that you're not, this isn't parents that you're financially dependent upon, for example?
Oh, no, just friends, but we're a very small university, so it's hard to ditch people. But not to mention, I genuinely do enjoy their company. I like their friendship. It's just the religion that I can't uh, reconcile sometimes. It's that old, I think it's a Christian saying, hate the sin, love the sinner. It's almost like that, but for the religion itself.
Yeah. It's tough because like I see it as I was listening to a friend of mine earlier today on TikTok, and he was explaining like why if somebody invites you to like their church or something like that for a holiday or for whatever reason, like it's okay to say no and that you shouldn't feel bad about that. And he had some commenter that was saying like, no, it's selfish. It's very selfish for you not to listen to their religious beliefs, not to hear them out, and not to go to church with them and all this stuff. And he was explaining, I love the way he explained it. He said that like going to a religious event, a religious, ceremony, or having a religious conversation or whatever like that, it is fundamentally no different than a political event or a political rally or a political conversation. Like, of course, there's difference in topics, but like, if you wouldn't invite this person, or rather, you should say the exact same hesitation you would experience inviting somebody to a political rally or inviting somebody to discuss your favorite politician or whatever, is the same level of hesitation you should have in terms of inviting somebody to a religious conversation, religious event, to talk about your favorite religious figure, whatever it is, because you are inviting them to discuss something or to attend an event that goes against their belief system, their worldview, may not vibe with their values, their morals, whatever like that. And you are asking them to make themselves uncomfortable in order not only just to not even necessarily to agree with you, but to make you more comfortable in the fact that you are getting to tell everybody this thing that matters to you and doesn't matter to them. And you can also see the dichotomy between, how that kind of thing goes over when a religious person is espousing their religion to a group of unwilling strangers versus if you were to go up to that religious person and say, shut the fuck up, your God's not real, I don't want to hear any of this. You are arguing for quiet and peace and serenity, and yet you would be labeled the disrespectful one. So I think in this situation, if you're surrounded by people who hold very different beliefs than you, you should, as long as they're not pushing this on you, maybe you can deal with it, maybe you can tolerate it. If their beliefs are particularly cruel, if say for example you're non-binary and they believe that God said gender is super binary and they're trying to push that on you or something like that, well then fuck you. Yeah, you're infringing on my dignity by trying to tell me this shit and I don't want anything to do with that. But like, as long as they're being polite and allow you the same opportunity to at least talk about your beliefs the same way that they would, then I guess you're fine. But I'm going to go ahead and bet that that's not going to be the case. You know what I mean? I'm going to go ahead and bet good money that you will be labeled the asshole if you treat them the exact same way that they treat you.
Your bets are not exactly incorrect, but not in so how do you say direct a way. Like, it's not so much coming after my identity or anything. It's more so just I think I mentioned before that I really enjoy learning. I enjoy looking at science, and I'm an English student, so I like looking at words and linguistics, so sort of anthropology and stuff, which religion also really impacts stuff like anthropology, and sometimes I find those views of mine coming into conflict with the views of people I spend time around.
Yeah. Do you have to discuss these things? Like, have you tried when the conversations aren't going well? Have you tried sort of the boundary setting? I know that works maybe better in a family situation or a partner situation, but have you tried kind of saying, hey, you know what? While we're hanging out, I'd kind of prefer not to talk about religion, if that's okay. We have all this other stuff in common. Let's focus on that and maybe leave that other stuff at the door. Have you tried to any extent setting some boundaries that way?
I've been bad with it before, but in my defense, I think I'm trying very well in this one.
Okay.
I think that's
and
the best place to start with it.
are they reacting okay to that or not so much?
They sometimes have a little bit, I don't know. Sometimes I'm sure you guys are aware of it, a victim mentality around some people identifying as a Christian.
Indeed.
Yeah. That's an understatement. Yeah, no, there's very much victim mentality, and that makes it so insidious. Is because it's like, oh, if anybody tells you this is wrong, or if anybody doesn't want to talk to you about this, that's your proof that it's right, and you need to be talking about it more. Yeah, honestly, I think Paul's suggestion is the best place to start. Just like, listen, y'all, this is not for me. You notice I'm not coming to your door talking about why there's no God and all these things. I just would prefer if we drop it because I value your friendship and I want to be your friend and I don't want to feel ostracized or looked down upon because we don't share a belief system. I also don't want to feel talked down to. It's just not important for me. If you want to have this conversation, we can set up rules for it, but it's really just a touchy subject that isn't good for me. So let's just not deal with it. And if they're your friends, they'll respect that. And if they're not, then they won't. And so like, that's kind of the thing whenever we talk about, because we get calls all the time, like how do I deal with a religious friend, religious family member, religious partner, whatever like this. The same question or the same answer for me is always, you need to decide how much of your relationship that conversation is worth and whether or not you're willing to make that trade. And if you're not, then don't have the conversation. And if you are willing to make the trade, have as much of the conversation as you are willing to have to as much of the trades you're willing to make, and be prepared for this person to be real pushy about it because they usually will be. But I have religious friends and we just don't talk about that stuff. Or if we do, they're prepared for me to not pull any punches. And so they just don't bring it up and we move on and we're cool. And I have friends also that are not my friends anymore because that didn't work. And it was like, hey, I need you to hear about Jesus. I'm like, okay, we're not going to do it. This is not my job to sit here and entertain you. I do this shit for a living. Call in. You know what I mean?
Yes, I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, dude. Anyway, Aspen, I appreciate you starting off our show on a good note because like this is a very important conversation. We try to help people deconstruct, and that comes with a lot of trouble like this. So I really appreciate you starting us off this way.
Do you mind if I add a little bit of context that might shed some light on what I'm going through insofar as this goes, or would you rather get to other calls?
Paul, do you care for a small amount of context before we move on?
Well, just give us the Reader's Digest version, the short version.
Of course. I've seen rambling callers before. I don't want to be one.
You've been good so far.
I've got a little bit of discomfort around religion because I'm sure you could probably guess, Aspen is my chosen name, not my assigned at birth name. My original name has a lot to do with this religion. So that, especially when they're studying or mentioning one of the prophets or one of the what are they called? Disciples that have those
My name is
names.
Paul, so I get wherever you're going with this, I get it.
That's exactly where. There was a few days, or not a few days, it was like a month ago that they were studying for an exam and they kept mentioning that name over and over again, and it sort of brought out some not so good feelings in me. As well, we've had discussions about this stuff before, and it's led to things like, I mean, Forrest, you've talked about this in like some of your videos, like the Night at the Ark Encounter review and the I think it was a John and Jane video about dinosaurs on the Ark.
Yeah. Honestly, like I don't have a biblical name, but my old last name from I was born with a different last name, and that only changed a little bit later on in my life, and my old last name doesn't make me happy either. And I still have, there are people in my life that still know that. And I've been called by that. And it just makes me unhappy if I even recognize it. Usually it doesn't register. And then it's like, when I think about it, I'm like, So I get the feeling, but like, if this is your chosen name and these people, sorry?
You mean the name you changed to get away from the FBI?
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So I really just don't want them catching me, and so I don't like people saying it. But yeah, that's I get it, man. And in as much as I could get something like that, and if that's a thing for these people, I would just say it's a matter. It's still a matter of respect. If you got married and changed your last name, then they could bring up your maiden name, maybe, but it really wouldn't be appropriate to like rub it at you. It's just kind of weird. You know what I mean? It's very strange to do. And especially if you're like, hey, that's not my fucking name, y'all. They should drop it. And then like, if they're not doing that, then those are not good friends. So like, if this is just something that they're bringing up and it just makes you uncomfortable and they're not like trying to rub this name in your face, well, then that's something that you can deal with on your own, or you can just tell them like, hey, y'all, I just don't want to talk about this shit right now. And you don't have like, whatever. But like, if this is something that they are like trying to like bring upon you to make you feel a certain way, or because they think it's funny when it isn't, then like, that's a conversation you need to have and just be like, yo, I get why this is silly for you, but it's a different thing for me. This is a dead name for me. It's not something that makes me happy. It's something that makes me sad. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to deal with it. And I really appreciate just leaving it alone. It's a different feeling for me that you might not understand. I understand it might be confusing for you, but for me, it's really important. So this is not a big ask. I'd really appreciate it if we just did this instead. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. You know what I mean?
It's more the second one. They were studying for a one of their theology classes, and the name got brought up.
Yeah. So it makes sense. It's on their mind. It's something they're studying. Just, you can set a boundary without being a jerk and just be like, yo, here's where this is an issue for me.
Or that might be the day where if they're doing group study, it might be appropriate in that case for you to remove, like they can't study this person without saying their name, right? Like they aren't being malicious that way. So that might be a good time for you to say, you know what, this is just I'm gonna go to the coffee shop for an hour while you guys do this stuff.
That's totally fine. If they're just existing as people using a name, then that is on you to handle it. But if they're rubbing it in your face, then that's on them to fix. You know what I mean? It's all about tactics and
I mean, I completely understand it. Hell, one of my favorite YouTubers actually shares the same name, but it's different when I'm willingly and sort of with a choice exposing myself to something that might be upsetting to me,
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. You don't owe anybody an explanation, but you do owe yourself comfort. And so like if this is something that's going to be a hard situation, I think Paul's suggestion is great. You can either deal with it on your own, or you can remove yourself from the situation. There's no reason to bring them into it unless they are bringing themselves into it. If they know this is a hurtful thing for you and they are bringing it up anyway, then you can call them out for it. But if it's just these people talking and they just happen to use a name that triggers something in you, then it's up to you to deal with that. And there's lots of ways to do it. But like, I think you seem like a reasonable enough person. So I don't think you're going to have an issue with that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Hey, Aspen, I really appreciate you calling in. It was a great way to start the show. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your studies.
Yeah, no problem.
Good luck,
Forrest, my mother is really jealous of you. You got to go to the Galapagos, and she's really been wanting to for a while.
Well, we may go back someday. I don't know. We'll just keep your eyes open, but you should go. It's phenomenal. It's an amazing place. The people are incredible. The wildlife is extraordinary. And we had an amazing time just because the community there is so incredibly cool. So go check them out. They're really, really nice people. I'll see you later.
Thank you very much.
All right. We've got, while we're on that call, some theists called in, and we've got two theists, one deist here. Let's talk first to Ray, pronouns he, him, calling in from Tiny Xylophones, wants to know how we feel about the simulation hypothesis that many physicists espouse if it implies a creator. I feel like it's an interesting way to talk about creators. Ray, you're on the line with Forrest and Paul. How are you doing today?
Good. Yeah, I'm super excited. I've been watching y'all for years. Can I give you a little bit about my background?
If it's relevant.
I think it is. I know you guys are in a rush. I'll be very, very quick. So I'm a Sikh. with turbans and stuff. I became an
Yeah.
atheist. And I read a lot of physics. It's kind of like a hobby of mine. And in my religion and in the Hindu religion, there's this thing, it's called Maya. It means that basically we're living in this fake world, and this is not reality. And really the afterlife is the real world, almost like the Matrix, And the only way to attain that and to sort of become one with God is through what's called nirvana, which means you understand that you're living in this matrix-like world, and only then, when you understand that, then you'll escape the cycle of birth and death and join God. Okay, so I was like, whatever, that who cares? Then in all my physics readings, I've been reading about this thing called the simulation hypothesis, which when you study quantum theory and non-locality and all the stuff that doesn't make sense, it kind of does make sense if you think that we are in a simulation where we're sort of living in a advanced computer program, and we don't have free will, and we're kind of someone's entertainment. So I would give that less than a 0.1% chance of probability. However, if it is true, what do you guys think about that in terms of a creator?
I mean, yeah, if big ol' if there is a simulation that we're all living in, then and somebody's running that simulation, then yeah, by definition, that whatever that thing is, that person, I'll just say the word person for now, would be the creator of this universe. The issue with that is that I can't stress enough just how big that if is. And so it's as useful as
sorry.
Oh no, I was going to say it's as useful as saying, no, you're fine. There's a delay. It's okay. It's as useful as saying, what if we're a brain in the vat and the creator is the person feeding chemicals to the brain? Or what if this is literally the Matrix? Or what if this other thing and this other, or what if we're all actually, none of this exists and I'm insane and I'm in an asylum somewhere dreaming all of this? Or the whole, I think it's like last Tuesdayism. What if the universe came into existence just last Tuesday and all my memories were pre-planted? And like, the thing is, these are unfalsifiable. And more importantly, like, none of that makes sense in terms of the laws of physics that we understand. If we were to say, okay, well, there's this other guy, well, then this other guy isn't supernatural. This other guy obeys the same laws of physics as we do. So there's still no reason for a God belief, unless it doesn't. And the physics that we live under are just part of the simulation, in which case there's other physics out there, which we can't comprehend. There's just it's not worth thinking about, is basically my argument. It's just, there's no reason to go.
So I was, a lot of people, if you go back to the origins of quantum mechanics and you look at what Bohr and what these guys said, they're like, you can't understand quantum mechanics. It's not even worth asking. It's a question we can't, really wrap our heads around. So forget about it. But I disagree. I think that it is still, now maybe I'm just romanticizing this idea, and hoping, it brings human beings. I think it would be awesome if there was a creator. Like, it would be cool, right? Like, so maybe I'm just romanticizing it. But I still. That's why I switched from an atheist to an agnostic, for this exact reason. So I don't know. I just thought it kind of
those aren't analogous, right? Like the fact that we currently can't understand quantum physics.
Yep. Right.
Doesn't mean that it's not falsifiable, right? Because no one's deemed any quantum mechanics to be non-falsifiable, versus simulation theory is entirely non-falsifiable. So I guess
you're right. I guess you're right.
I wouldn't put those in the same category. I feel like quantum mechanics isn't something we're going to necessarily understand in my lifetime, but perhaps generations down the road, they will study it in school like we learned E = MC squared, right? Like someone will crack it and they'll have it figured out. So I think it is worth still studying. Well, that's why it's worth studying it's worth studying quantum mechanics. Maybe not worth life pursuing simulation theory.
Life pursuing, but that people would say the same thing about the many worlds hypothesis and the multiverse, and some hardcore physicists. I mean, real physicists this is their job. They are trying to figure out cracks and trying to how to figure out the multiverse and stuff. I'm just thinking, I mean, I agree with you guys. We're splitting hairs here. I think that what I'm saying is kind of a romantic thing. While I have you on the phone, I know I'm being greedy. Can I ask you guys one more thing? It'll be very
briefly,
short.
yes. Yes.
Briefly, okay. I come from a devoutly religious family, and I cannot bring myself to tell my kids that I don't believe in God. I mean, I've let it out, but it's intellectually dishonest of me to not tell them that. But I haven't told them that. My kids are in their young teen years, and I feel really dirty for not telling them that. And I kind of make them, go through some of the. I mean, by no means are we devout religious or anything like that. But what do you guys think about social religion? Like, I'm a social seeker, being a social Christian, something like that, where the social aspect of the culture and the religion are so intertwined that you don't want to totally let go of your culture.
Some of the social aspects of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, you first.
Pardon me?
I deconverted when my children were in their, young teens, is when I deconverted, and the worst possible scenario happened, and that was that someone else told them that I was no longer religious. Okay, now I had told a few people who I thought I could trust, but it turns out I could not.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that whatever your strategy is, someone else telling them is the worst way for the relationship.
Okay.
So I do think you probably, if you want to avoid that, I mean, one way is to be very open and like literally sit them down and say, Dad, no longer, I have different ideas, and you can peddle that if you want, but it, in a way, sometimes this stuff should come from you. You are expressing, though, that it may be it's not central to their lives the way that we went to church 4 times a week, right? Like it was pretty freaking important. And my job was at the church, so it's a bigger deal for me. But
for sure.
But that said, you can soften. You can do it softly, right? You can start saying. You can start peddling around the edges of whatever doctrines you have, where it started, maybe I'm not so sure about this. I'm sorry that I'm so Christian-centric, and I don't have great examples.
Okay. No, that's totally fine.
But the Christian-centric thing is like, well, maybe I don't believe in hell the way I use it. You can start softly. You can say, are angels maybe what we thought they were? And you can start seeding some of the stuff so that it's not a surprise when they found out that Paul. That would have been my preferable way. It was like, oh yeah, well, Paul doesn't really believe in angels anymore, or salvation, or sin, and some of these stuff. So I guess it makes sense that it's now there. I could have got there a little softer. But I just from my own personal life experience, I really need to warn against someone else framing it for your loved ones. That's so come up with a plan that doesn't let that happen.
Last question about this topic. So what happens if our church is called a gurdwara or a temple is really the only lifeline to our old culture that we had, and it's in the temple. So should I still go? I mean, we still go once in 2 months or 3 months and just kind of go through the motions, and more for just feeling good and kind of nostalgic. Chemicals rushing through my body from childhood. Not that I believe any of it, because it's all bullshit.
Is there a secular flavor of your religion that you're like? So I know a lot of people who call themselves secular Jews, right? Like they go to temple.
No, man.
They obey the Shabbat.
Mine is like no. There's. I mean, I've heard like Dawkins talk about he's a social Christian. I think that's what I am, but it's much more intertwined, and we speak the language and listening to the stuff, so we just go. But I don't know if that makes me kind of a liar.
But is it different than going to like let's say I go to
you go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, no, let's say you go to say that, like,
Lord of the Rings book club. Like it's the same thing. Go ahead, Forrest. I'm going to shut up.
You're
going to talk.
No, there's the delay sucks ass, man. It's fine. The whole thing I was going to say is just like, the social side of Sikhism is one of the reasons I was actually really drawn to it. And when I was in my late teens, I loved the whole idea just from what I was seeing from it. I thought it was so fucking cool. And I especially love the major charity aspect of it. And so, like, there may not be a secular version of it that I can think of either, but I'm also not a Sikh, or nor have ever been, so I don't know. But like, there may not be a cultural aspect to it, but like, or a secular, but you could still do Sikhish things like take your kids to a soup kitchen and have volunteer work there, or like, you know, do really cool things that go in line with Sikhism without necessarily teaching them about God or making them, you know, grow their hair long, or any of the other things that go along with it. So like, for me, I think that, you know, if you were talking about like your grandparents or something like that, or like some friends at the office, something like that, no, but you don't owe them an explanation. You don't have to talk to them about it. None of that. But your kids, kids deserve the best version of you. And if the best version of you, I think, is an honest one. And so, I think you should do what Paul said and just find a way to work them into it and just say, listen, this is not 100% for me. This is a dated tradition. However, there is some value in this and this and this. And we're going to do these things. And maybe in your life, you can find ways to get this same value with even less of the religious aspect of it. I think that's totally fine. Just, you know, there's no reason to make them think you believe something, because then they are going to look up to you. They are going to emulate you, and they are going to fall into the trap of believing in a religion that you don't believe in and doing things you don't think are right because they want to be like you.
Yeah. And I think I've let the cat out of the bag. Like, I'm being very polite right now. Like, I'm usually very aggressive when I talk to theists, and I say, well, I don't believe in Santa Claus either. Like, and I've talked like that a lot in front of the family. So I think they already know. And I think my oldest son is already kind of, because I can't hold back. I mean, it's organized religion is so ludicrous to me. Anyways. So he already kind of knows, but anyways, you guys are great. Thanks so much for taking my call.
Take care. See you later, Ray.
Take care, Ray.
Said he was an agnostic. Said that religion is bullshit. Called in as a theist. Maybe
I know, right? I was a little confused about labels, but everyone uses labels differently. So
I didn't want to call him out on because he was a nice guy, and I'm not going to like be a jerk about it. But like, it's very interesting. We've got a few more callers on the line here. I'm interested. Do you have call in studio up?
I do.
How do you feel between 5 and 1 is what I'm looking at right now.
I'm more interested in 1.
Yeah, me too. Okay, let's talk to let's talk to John, pronouns he, him, calling in from Meek Aardvarks. That's stupid.
I was going to say monkey asses, so you did much better.
Monkey asses is good. No, monkey asses is really good. The God exists, and it literally just says the cosmological argument on the screen. I don't know if John typed that in or if the call screener typed that in. But hi, John. You're on the line with Forrest and Paul. How you doing? John, can you hear us?
You might be muted, John. There you go.
Oh, there we go. John exploded into existence.
Oh, he might have been coughing. I see. Yeah.
Ah, gotcha. All right, John. So tell us what God you believe in and why you believe in it. And it says here cosmological argument again. I don't know if you wrote that or not. But if that is the argument, we'll have a lot of fun with it.
Yes. So I'm a bit of a
John is currently dying. John might find out if there's a God before we do.
Should we put John back in the queue? John, do you need a few minutes? We can come back to you, John, if you'd like.
I'm feeling better.
Okay, good.
Okay. Bad timing. All right, John, what's going on?
So I'm trying to prove to you guys the cosmological argument.
Okay, so just so we're all on the same page, the cosmological argument, as I understand it, is, or at least I know, I'm most familiar with the Kalam version, which is that everything that has every effect needs a cause. Everything in the universe needs a cause, and therefore there must be something that caused the universe, and that cause is God. Is that where we're going, right? Or is there something different?
That's the basic structure, yeah.
Cool. Which God?
For me, the Christian God. Okay.
How do you get to the Christian God from the cosmological argument? because the cosmological argument is a bad argument for proving a God, but especially when you say specifically this God, and especially a God like the Christian God, it gets worse and worse and worse. So how do you get to specifically the Christian God from the Kalam argument?
Well, how do you know that my God is the right God?
I asked you. I don't think your God is the right God. I don't think your God is real. So, like, I'm asked. You said you were calling in about the Christian God specifically. How do you get to everything needs a cause? Therefore, you know, you can't have butt sex and you can't trim the sides of your beard, and you know, if a woman sits on a stool while she's menstruating, you have to burn it, and like all these other things that come with the Christian God.
I would consider your description a more fundamentalist description of Christianity. I think that modern Christianity is significantly different from that, like, right after the fall of the temple Christianity.
Okay, then take that. It doesn't matter. The point is, you're saying, I don't know what caused the universe. There must be something that caused the universe. Therefore, it's a guy, and I know the guy's name, and the guy put out a book, and I know what the guy wants of me, whether or not it's a fundamentalist version or not. Like, that's a lot of baggage you're carrying around simply on the single claim that you think the universe must have been caused by something, which is a totally different, silly argument. So, like, how do you get to the Christian God from there must be something that caused the universe?
Well, I mean, all the other religions have paradoxes. Like, for me, there are no paradoxes in Christian religion. Like,
okay, well, then you're not thinking about the Christian religion too hard.
I mean, what are you talking about?
Do you believe in the tri-omni God, a God that is omnipotent and omnibenevolent and omniscient, all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful?
For me, that is the Christian God.
Cool. Well, then the problem of evil destroys your God's, like, possibility.
No.
Okay, so then we can go to the old Epicurus if you'd like. Just, if this God is able to stop evil but not willing, then it is evil. If it is willing to stop evil but not willing, then it's not all powerful, right? If it's neither able nor willing, then it's not really God. So we take a look around us in the world. We see all sorts of pain and suffering that is not our fault, that is not caused by free will or any of this other stuff. Where's your God in this? If it's all loving, then the world around us certainly is not a loving place that it would have made, right?
What's to not make this world loving? You're alive, man. Like, do you realize how amazing that is?
I am, but there are about 25,000 people that starve to death every single day. That includes about 10,000 children. So 10,000 children dying in one of the most terrifying, painful ways possible every single day. They are not alive. They're dying in a horrible way. Is this part of the God's love?
Yes. What do you mean? Like,
explain to me how starving someone to death is loving.
Purposefully starving someone to death. You personally are starving someone to death. What are you talking about?
Did I say that? You said that your God. No, you need to go back and listen to what I said and take better notes. What your claim is that this God is all-powerful and all-knowing and all-loving at the same time. I'm telling you that 10,000 children starve to death in this world every single day. Your God knows about every single one of them because he is all-knowing. He could feed every single one of them because he is all-powerful. And he's all-loving, so he should, but he doesn't. So why is it loving, if this God is all-loving, why is it loving for this God to know these children are starving to death and do nothing to stop them despite his ability to do so?
Because of original sin.
Okay, that's not love. If you love someone, then you want to take care of them and protect them. If you love someone unconditionally, your love does not stop. God is all loving. God is love incarnate. Love doesn't have limits like that. If it is eternal, perfect, like a divine love, God's love has limits. God's love is conditional. God's love is limited by sin, and it is conditional upon repentance and acceptance and praise and worship. That's not love. At least it's not very good love. Anything else, John? Nope. Okay. Seems like that's the end of the John call. Are you there?
Yeah. But even with that, why is killing 10,000 people so bad?
Just say that sentence again.
What makes it bad? How is there any difference between good or evil?
The question is it loving?
Yeah, what does loving even mean?
So
you tell us.
Do you want to just that's the issue, is like we're giving you your worldview, your definition of love. And instead of just addressing the fact that this concept is incompatible with reality, you're now dancing over to the next thing. Well, you don't even have a love. What is love? And why is it bad for people to die? Like it's lazy thinking, John. Like you could very easily just grapple with the fact that if your God claims to love us, then it certainly wouldn't sit idly by while tens of thousands of people starve, die of dehydration, are raped, are murdered, are killed in genocides. Like there's a lot of evil shit in the world. And the thing is, John, if you're a parent, as this God is supposed to be all of our Father, and you see your children killing and raping and hurting each other, you don't just sit there with folded arms and say, well, they have free will, and I guess they were bad once, so I might as well let them. You do something. You intervene. You educate. You parent. You discipline in a kind and loving way. But the only time your God disciplines anybody is when he's drowning the entire world in a global flood, or burning cities with burning sulfur from the sky, or other horrific shit. That's not loving good discipline. Or he just does nothing and expects us to figure it out for him. And that's assuming that we're only looking at the parts of the Bible that are just directly talking about this, not talking about all the other parts of the Bible, which you may dismiss as fundamentalism.
The thing is all of those things are your vision of good and bad. And I agree with you. But God's vision is not the same.
Let me try to boil it down a little bit more directly. The God of the Bible is very clearly pro-slavery. Cover to cover, the Bible is good with slavery. Do you think that is actually good, or do you think that sometimes slavery is okay?
No, I think that slavery is horrible.
Right, but the God of the Bible doesn't. The God of the Bible not only says that slavery isn't bad, the God of the Bible gives instructions on how to do slavery. The God of the Bible condones and commands slavery. So, does that make him good, or does that make him evil?
What if there's some other gigantic, like the universe, same thing? All I'm trying to make a point is about moral utility. That what we deem to be good and bad, the basis for our moral values, where it's been cruxed in, is completely different than that God has in the whole plan. We could be an insignificant.
So I'm going to ask you I'm going to ask you this direct question again, because you're doing the thing again, where instead of actually grappling with the morality that you're claiming exists, you're just dancing to something else. John, is there ever, in any situation, any circumstance in which owning another human being as property against their will, beating them, passing them down to your children, is there ever any situation in any hypothetical reality where slavery is morally good?
Come on, man. You're just strawmanning. You're trying to get me to say something which is absolutely absurd and horrible.
How did I strawman you?
My argument.
No, John, I asked you a question.
Said exactly how you are trying to get me to say something that would completely demean my whole argument just because of
no, I am not. I'm trying to get you to answer an honest question without dodging to some other what if scenario.
You know exactly what you're doing, and that's just weak arguing.
What is weak about saying that slavery is bad,
would
John?
come at my argument.
John, I'm not a philosopher. I'm a biologist. I'm asking you, is slavery
Oh,
ever
no
acceptable? Ever?
No wonder.
Is slavery ever acceptable? Ever?
No, it's not. Not in my moral standing.
Okay. And yet your God says that it is. And the only thing you've offered is, well, maybe God has some other higher morality or whatever like that. And that's not good enough.
I don't have to completely agree with him to make his existence standing.
Okay, so you agree that God may be evil.
Evil by your definition. No, this is about some higher morality outside of yours.
If the God of the Bible exists,
how do you
if
are the arbiter of morality of the universe.
John, if the God of the Bible exists, then that God, if it exists, is pro-slavery, pro-sex slavery, pro-pedophilia, pro-genocide, pro-misogyny, pro-homophobia. That God is evil. If the God of the Bible is real, it is evil because the God of the Bible is an evil character. So if you're going to argue whether or not it exists, I'm happy to have that discussion. But as it stands right now, we should be able to agree that the God of the Bible is evil, whether it exists or not. Do you agree with me on that?
No.
So you don't I'm asking your opinion here. Based on your morality, you wouldn't say that this creature that commands for slavery, genocide, rape, torture, murder, like these things, this is a good guy.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the God of the Bible who commands genocide and slavery and misogyny and homophobia, and who drowned an entire planet because he regretted having kids.
In our eyes, in my eyes included, I could see that as evil. But we must recognize that he is a higher power than us.
That is why, John. That is why I asked you earlier when you threw a little fit and said that I was strawmanning you and all this shit. That's why I asked you, is there ever any situation ever, even in a hypothetical scenario, where it would be okay to own human beings as property?
Come on. That was clearly strawmanning.
Define what a strawman is. What do you think the word strawmanning means?
All right, okay. You're getting tangential here. There's no need to be talking about going into that.
No, if you're going to accuse me of strawmanning when I'm not, I'd like to know what you think that is.
Okay. Can we get back to the real argument here?
No. You've accused me of a logical fallacy twice. I would like you to tell me what you think it is I'm doing.
Look, you're just trying to demean my argument by making these fantastical scenarios that are meant to make me say something outrageous here. And then based on saying that outrageous thing, you're like, well, wow, this argument only works if slavery and rape is okay. Wow, that's
not at all what I've done. The outrageous thing that I'm trying to get you to say, John, the outrageous thing that I'm trying to get you to say is that slavery is always bad forever. There is no scenario in which slavery is good. That's the outrageous thing that I would like you to say.
No, you want me to say the other thing, which is not what I believe.
What other thing?
Because you know that. All right, man. This is what I'm saying. What other thing? Mine are not with God's morals.
So what you don't want to say is that God has good reason for slavery? Is that what you don't want to say?
No, he might not have good reason for it.
See, here's the thing, man.
You want
is
to
that, no, it's like I think you and I are saying the same thing, John. It's just like Paul, pardon me, John. The reason why I'm asking you this is not to straw man you, which, by the way, you've yet to tell me what you think straw manning means, and you have yet to. Nothing I've done has been a straw man yet. But what I'm trying to get you to admit is that you have a different moral framework than your God does. And you've kind of said that a couple of times. You've said that God's morality is different than ours, but that's an issue. Your opinion differs from God's in terms of what is or isn't good. And that's a major problem, because that's what causes good people who are in religious indoctrination to do evil shit. If people can make you believe absurdities, they can make you commit atrocities. So there's a long history of lots of religions, but Christianity as well, of people doing hideous, evil things because they think the Bible justifies it. And if you have a book that allows for slavery and allows for genocide and allows for incest and allows for murder and allows for sex slavery and pedophilia and all this other shit, then yeah, you're going to have people who think they're good people buying into it. And that's a problem.
Yeah, Christian.
Now, that's not the entire reason I don't believe your God is real. I think your God isn't good if it is real. And I'm asking you if you agree with that. And it sounds like you do, but you won't say it.
My moral framework is much more in line with more of a Kantian perspective. But I do still believe in the Christian God. And
these are my you believe in a God. You believe in a God that is different, that has different morals than you do. You believe in a God that thinks that horrible things are good and good things are horrible. You believe in an evil God. By calling things evil, it's not an objective statement here. I'm asking your opinion. In your opinion, anybody who wanted the things your God wants and said and did the things your God did and said would be evil, right?
Well, every religion is evil.
You can't just answer a straight question, dude. In your opinion, anybody who said and did the things your God did and said would be evil, right?
Yeah, he's evil.
Right. So then your God, if it exists, is also evil, right?
In a way, yes.
Yes. So now, going back to the beginning of the call, your entire argument here is that you think the universe needs a cause. How do you get, this is my original question that we never answered, how do you get from, I don't know where the universe came from, it must have a cause, all the way to, there is a monster that lives in the sky that wants me to have slaves? Where's the line? Where's the bridge there?
Well, I thought it'd be fun to roll the dice on a religion when I was younger, so chose Catholicism, and that's what I rocked with.
Do you care about whether or not what you believe is real?
Well, not really.
Okay, well then we're done. John, do you want to, or Paul, do you want to continue?
No, he's giggling, so we're good.
Yeah, it's a complete fucking waste of time. Thanks so much, John. Despite your best efforts to be a shitty troll, this has actually been productive because there's people who believe the dumb shit that you're saying here, and I hope they learn something from this call. Bye-bye. Yeah, that's like, even when it's something like this, the pose law is strong on these calls, and it's difficult to tell when somebody is trolling or not. But everything that John said on that call, I have heard people say in earnest. And so, like, it's still good, in my opinion, to have that call out there in its entirety, so that people can see.
Like, I didn't even suspect until the very end, because you're right. I've had that very conversation 100 times. So
Yep. It's frustrating. We're gonna move on to, let's talk to Christopher. Calling in from Piney. I've been falling back on anus and asses too much. Calling in from Piney Aardvarks, Pinecone Ascension. Throwing pine. Prickly Adams. Pomegranates and apples. I don't know. So we've got Christopher here, and pronoun is listed just as human. We're going to figure that out first, because that's not a pronoun. Why do atheists have a problem with Jesus if the church is bad, even if the church is bad? Christopher, first of all, you're on the line with Forrest and Paul. How are you doing today?
How do you do?
So human is not a pronoun. So how would you like us to address you or refer to you?
That's my name, Chris. I'm a human.
Okay.
You're a human.
Okay, so
Paulie's a human.
the issue
We're
with
all
that,
just human.
the issue with that, Christopher, is that human is not a pronoun and your name is not a pronoun. So I can't say Christopher called and Christopher said this. I would like to either say he or she or they.
I identify as a human. I identify as a human. Okay, would that
Great.
work? It's not really
No,
important.
because
I don't
it's
really
important
do
because
he, she, and all that. You're all just humans to me. I don't really look at you as different.
Chris,
everybody's just a human.
Everybody and you and all these other things, those are pronouns that you're using. So which pronoun should I use to refer to you? Would you prefer that I use he, she?
If it's that big to you, I don't know why it's such a big deal. Why he, she, or any of it. And my name's Christopher. That's it.
Okay, right, but I can't.
Call me Chris,
refer to
and we're good there. Chris is a unisex name. You can refer to me as a he or a she.
You're gonna have to calm down a little bit. I can't refer to you as exclusively. Okay, I can't refer to you as Chris all the time. It's kind of silly to expect me to do that. That's why we use pronouns, is to shorten down our language.
Okay, he.
So it's weird.
All right,
it's weird that it's this big of a deal to you. Just pick a pronoun. He works. Okay. We're gonna go with he.
Okay.
I also use he, him pronouns, by the way, in case you're curious.
Cool.
So
it's the way I look at life. It's just my way.
Well, that's a really weird way to do that. Very, very weird to make it that big.
I'm not a normal person, so why would I do things like everybody else? I'm not a sheep. I don't follow what anybody does. Really?
Yes, you do.
My
you do
life
all the time.
Is not boring.
You do follow what everybody else does all the time. That's why you're not in prison right now, because you haven't been speeding around and killing people, because that's not what other people do.
No, it's because it's the right thing to do. I don't hurt people and I don't take because it's the right thing to do, not because of the law tells me to do it.
That sounds like a sheep behavior going around with the right thing to do. Everybody does the right thing.
Either way, why do atheists pin the bust on Jesus? That's what my question is.
Because the God of the Bible, in all of his different personalities, is not a good person.
I don't believe in Christianity. I'll tell you that. I'm not a Christian at all. I'm not even close.
Do you believe in a God? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Paul, what were you saying?
My God. My God's name is Evolution.
Forrest and I are not here to answer for what atheists that are not on the show say.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just curious in general because you guys watch other atheists. I do too.
But you don't. You tell me what specifically are we? I study Jesus every single day, like it's my job because it is. So,
okay, so what did he do bad?
Well, here's my problem with Jesus is that I have no idea what he did. None. I have no idea.
He fed people, he helped people, and he showed them
how do you know that
they are human.
How do you know that he did any of those things?
Okay, hold on. Even if he did not exist, the fact that he would walk by a blind man and help the man just because he was being kind is a good personality for a human.
Hold on, Christopher.
Correct.
So you're talking about the character. You want to abstract this to the character of Jesus as portrayed in the Bibles, right? Because I can happily have that conversation with you.
Being a nice guy that would help people out for no money.
So why do people dislike? So why do people dislike that character the same way they might dislike Moriarty, or they might dislike Darth Vader, or they might dislike Frodo, that little jerk?
Other characters that don't exist. Yeah.
Well, basically, the character of Jesus helped people like Martin Luther King and helped people like Nelson Mandela to free people from slavery.
So did other characters.
Martin Luther King was a Christian.
Yeah.
I'm just saying in general.
The character of Socrates helped a lot of people as well become better people and change the world in good ways. We don't know if Socrates was real either. So, like, just saying he's a good character. First of all, no, he's not. But so first of all, this character is not a good character wholly. He has some good qualities, but he's not overall a good dude. And even if he was, he's still just a character.
Bad. What did Jesus do that was bad?
So
that's
first
what I
of
want to
all,
hear.
Jesus is supposedly the Son of God, and supposedly also somehow God himself. It's a weird thing with the Trinitarianism. I don't dig it. But like this character of Jesus comes in following the Old Testament, where you have the God who promotes slavery and genocide and all this shit that we talked about in the last call. And Jesus does not say, listen, y'all, slavery is actually bad, it turns out. It turns out genocide is bad. Jesus says, not a jot or a tittle of the law shall change until all things come to pass. I come not to change the law, but to fulfill it. No one shall love me unless they hate their parents and their brother. I come to set brother against brother. I come not to bring peace, but the sword.
Where are you getting this information from?
I'm just going to put you on mute for a second because you can't stop interrupting us long enough to listen. Yeah, that's also, he also says that you know, anybody who doesn't want to follow me, bring them before me and kill them before me because they're my enemy. Like this Jesus character has some nice stuff and also some insane stuff depending on which part of what gospel you read, because they're horribly internally inconsistent. This is the same character that cured the blind man, is the same character who set a fucking tree on fire because it didn't have any figs for him. So like he's you know, depends on where you're reading, he's a lunatic. I'll now bring you back, Christopher.
Point. That's what I'm curious.
You were talking while we were talking again. That's why we muted you. So now you can respond to what we were saying.
Okay, where are you getting your information from? The Holy Bible, and religious texts. Who wrote the Bible? The Catholic Church, correct?
No.
So you think that the Bible is inaccurate about...
Where did the Bible come from?
Christopher,
where did the Bible come from?
Christopher, if you think there's a better source on the life and times of Jesus than the Bible, I would like to hear it.
I would love to read the Dead Sea Scrolls. I would love to know what's on that information.
Okay, but you already have. So
the Dead Sea Scrolls were all written
because of
hundreds of years before Jesus lived, so that would be not helpful.
Yeah, that's not really going to do anything for you.
When Jesus actually lived, or I never said Jesus was a true or not true person. I'm not a Christian. I said the quality.
I understand that.
But
I understand that. But you did say, Christopher, it's so frustrating. You said that even if Jesus didn't exist, the character is this person or that person. We're drawing upon the character of Jesus from the only reliable, like consistent place where the character of Jesus is derived from, which is the Bible. Where else would we be getting information about the character of Jesus?
Did the people that wrote the scriptures, whatever religion, believe in slavery, believe in doing all these horrible things to humans?
Yes.
The people who wrote the Bible, they believed in doing this to humans. They wrote the Bible. They're the ones that are going to say this is acceptable.
But
okay,
so which means the character. Which means the character in the book that they wrote is also going to be despicable. So despicable people wrote a despicable book with a despicable character. And yes, Jesus said and did some good things.
But wouldn't they also write negative things about that character? If I was going to write to make someone look bad, I'm going to write bad things about that character in my book. The religion wrote the Bible. In the Bible,
deliberately write things about Jesus that are bad. That's a silly thing to say.
In the Bible, is there anything in the Bible that is actually written by Jesus?
No.
Why not?
It's all just stories about him.
Because Jesus died before at least 30 years, if not 100 years.
Before the Bible was written.
Before the Bible was written, so Jesus didn't.
As far as we know,
as
far as we know, Matthew's didn't have a diary.
In the Bible, and Peter's in the Bible, and the writings are in the Bible. Now, if Jesus was a genius and spoke several languages,
that doesn't make any sense.
Okay, they're handing me down. I don't believe the Bible either. I'm trying to fix it.
We know. You've told us.
Christopher. This is like you called into a show and said,
"No, what I want to show you."
Spider-Man.
I'm just going to mute him for a second.
So, Christopher, if you call a show and say, "I want to talk about why people don't like Spider-Man," and we give you a list, and you say, "Well, those are things that Stan Lee liked. Why are you blaming Spider-Man for them?" And we're like, "Well, that's because I thought we were talking about the Stan Lee character."
Right? It's so frustrating, Christopher. Like you're not consistent with your own argument. We know you're not a Christian. We know you don't believe this. We very clearly established that we're talking about the character of Jesus. The character of Jesus is from the Bible. The character of Gandalf is from the Lord of the Rings. If we're going to talk about Gandalf and whether or not he was a good guy, we're going to be referencing the Lord of the Rings. And it doesn't help to say, well, what about what J.R.R. Tolkien said? It's just, is Gandalf the character good? Is Spider-Man the character good? Is Jesus the character good? Spoiler alert, Gandalf good, Spider-Man pretty good, Jesus no. Just like it's not hard, man. We're having a hypothetical situation here. We're all friends. We're all good. We don't need to be talking over each other and yelling and being strange. We'll bring you back on one more time, but I'll be honest with you, Christopher, it's not going great. So, Christopher, the character of Jesus is not a good person. That answers your question, right?
Look, no, it doesn't. What I'm trying to show you is the person itself. To me, Jesus is just the ideal human. Okay? Human that would help all humans. Okay?
He's not ideal. He's not ideal in any way.
You're talking about Cal
because of like.
Yes, exactly.
There's another reference to Jesus. There's so many different characters in human history that portray the same remnants of Jesus, helping humans evolve.
Kal-El is no more of a reference to Jesus than anybody in the world. He's a good guy who did good things sometimes.
Humanity that does good things for no reason other than to be kind.
That is not a trait that is solely attributable to Jesus. There were plenty of hero stories before and after Jesus that had nothing to do with each other. Just because somebody's a good person doesn't mean that they're like Jesus or an analogy to Jesus. And if it is, I want to see the part of the Bible where Jesus had fucking heat vision, y'all. That sounds cool.
Joe Shuster was Jewish and didn't like Christians.
Wait a minute. I can show you things that Jesus... Okay, tell me something. Can Superman hear all the world's suffering?
No, well, maybe. I don't know.
He can hear everything, so he can hear all the world's suffering. So can Jesus. Wow, what a comparison. I could easily compare the two.
Oh, this is, if you were a literary student, you can give me any two characters that I can compare.
It's a hero story. That's all Jesus is.
Yeah, so you're just saying
hero stories are not derived from Jesus. It's just a type of media.
No, but he's a good character to keep the hero story going.
He's not.
I don't like the Bible.
No.
I like the idea of someone helping someone for no other reason, just because it's the right thing to do.
Version of Jesus. You've created your own fanfic version of Jesus.
I told you I wanted to change the Bible. I said I wanted to change the Bible.
But here's
the
thing.
I literally want to fix the Bible.
You gotta calm down. You gotta calm down.
I'm enjoying myself.
Forrest and I are not privy to the imaginary character version of Jesus that you have in your head. That's just, unfortunately, so we can't have a discussion about whether the Jesus that you imagine is good or not. That's just, we aren't inside your head. So unfortunately, that's not going to be a productive call.
Also, you're asking why do atheists dog on Christianity. You're asking why atheists do this, like shows like this. It's because the vast majority of Christians that we at least get to talk to are the people that legislate in this country and all these other, like, they are believing in a very different Jesus than you do. And that's the Jesus we especially don't like. So, like, why do we argue about Jesus? It's because the Jesus in the Bible is not somebody that I think we should be emulating. And also, the Jesus that most Christians believe in is not someone I think we should be emulating. So, like, There's a lot of reasons to excoriate the Jesus of the Bible. That's your whole question, was why do we have a problem with Jesus? Is because every version of Jesus accessible to us, and every version of Jesus that is actually like consequential to us is a shitty version of Jesus. That's what we're talking about. That's why we do this show. To answer your question, Christopher, I don't see a reason to continue this conversation.
All right. Well, I just look at him as just being a nice guy.
He's not. He's not a nice guy.
Christopher, you go write a book where there's a really nice guy in it named Jesus.
There you go. And that's all it is.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I don't think
Jesus is not a nice guy. Jesus is not a nice guy. And Jesus is in the New Testament is where we get the concept of hell. And if you don't follow Jesus, you burn forever. Like, it's not a nice guy, not worth your time, not worth our time. I did answer your question.
You did answer my question, so thank you very much for your time.
And you as a pro now.
Enjoy
Thank you, Christopher. Bye-bye. Good gravy. Like, such a hard stance on such meaningless shit. I don't follow what other people do. That's why I'm not a sheep. And then also, I don't use certain parts of speech because I'm not a sheep. And also, my imaginary version of Jesus is better than yours. Therefore, you can't be mad about it. What to all of it? You know?
You learn more from the troll. Anyway.
Yeah, it was fun. It'll make good content. Sure. Because people, like I said, like this, I can't stress enough. Like, people sometime in the comments will be like, "Oh, these guys entertain trolls for too long." Number one, you can't fucking tell. I promise you. And number two, like, no matter how crazy it is, we've had a call like that that's serious. So, like, I can't, like,
Oh, I don't think Christopher was a troll, by the way. I think Christopher was.
I don't either.
Selling. I think he believed that he was selling. Yep.
I think he's definitely up there. Arden, I put some things in the chat, and if you wouldn't mind. In the meantime, let's look at Luis, maybe Luis, because he's calling in from Brazil. Pronouns he, him, as a deist. How do the host feel about the possibility of the origin of life and the Fermi paradox? Ooh, girl, that sounds fun. Luis, you are on the line with Forrest and Paul. Also, please tell me how you pronounce your name. How are you today?
Hey. Yeah, it's Luis.
Awesome.
Welcome, Louis.
So I watch the show a lot, and I know you guys like pretty much try to argue against like literal creationists and guys that, you know, try to infer like a huge meaning out of simple things like DNA. But I would still like to try to understand like how you guys see this idea that basically we are the only life that seems to exist on the observable universe.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, when I see, for example, what?
I'm sorry, I thought you were done speaking. Go ahead.
No, yeah, sorry. Like, Forrest, for example, he led me to read this very interesting paper on like peptides that like assemble on space, and that's like actually very interesting. But like, I still think it's way crazier that we don't see signs of like alien life, basically. So I would like to know, like, how do you guys feel about that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the Fermi paradox is a paradox for a reason. With how likely life probably is, it seems bizarre that we haven't seen any of it. I think it's important to point out when we talk about the Fermi paradox that like other life in the universe doesn't necessarily mean life like ours. One of the biggest issues, there's the whole, I think it's the Drake equation that kind of like helps explain the Fermi paradox a little bit, is that you're not just saying probability of life in the universe. You're saying this life exists. This life has evolved to add in a direction and to a point where it can have intelligence, and then also gets to a technological point where it can send and receive radio signals. And then it is doing that. And then it has that thing turned on and pointed in the right direction to get our signals or to send signals to us. And also the light years of time it takes to get to and from there. And then also us on the sending and receiving side are doing all of those things at the right time and listening at the right time in the right direction and blah, blah, blah. Like there's so many variables there that it is as likely, like, we talk about, like, the universe is so fucking big, it's absolutely ridiculous to assume that there's no life anywhere else. It's also a little crazy to assume that we would have found any because of how little we've actually looked and just how unlikely it is for these signals that we're sending to get to each other. So, like, for me, the possibility of the life being out there is pretty damn high, just because of how common the building blocks of life are, how often we see them self-assemble, just how big the universe is. Like, that's all shit that tells me that, like, life is definitely out there. In terms of us being able to interact with it, that's a totally different thing, and it makes it like it's a lot of compounding probability that makes it difficult to assume that that's going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. But, like, in general,
does it answer your question?
So, like, yeah. Just like one more thing, I guess. So, like, you don't think that life in general, like, is something special, like, at all, right? Like, it's pretty probable, like, to happen.
It seems to be. Even if it was very, very unique and very rare, then I still wouldn't call it special, because it's just a philosophical thing. I don't think that anything's special. But, like, insofar as the word is used, in the way the word is used to just say, like, it's just it's a unique, rare thing. Yeah, life can be unique and rare. That's fine. But it is very clearly an emergent property of matter. It's just a chemical system. So, like, it's something that is possible in this universe. It's something that follows natural laws in this universe. I don't see a reason to prescribe any kind of, like, magical thinking to it.
No, yeah, of course. I also believe that there's, like, life out there for sure. So I typed down the whole Drake equation. I didn't know about that answer. I guess that I was more familiar with, like, the idea that the whole universe was pretty young. But I will look into that later. I guess that does answer more of my question. Thank you, guys.
My pleasure. Yeah, I'm pulling up the Drake equation right now to make sure I can actually say it properly.
I'm just going to add one note. I think you are.
Yes.
But one note before that. So, like, in my grandfather's day, there were no radio signals that were leaving the planet. Right? Like, so how arrogant would I have to be? How much recency bias would I have to like, so if aliens were looking for us 80 years ago, they would find nothing, right? Yeah. So, like, 80 years in the sense of 13.8 billion isn't even worth mentioning, right? So I would be, I guess this is only, Fermi's paradox is only really a paradox that bothers you to the extent where you're expecting stuff. And just in light of how far away everything is and how temporal you have to, how temporally balanced it would have to be, that the civilization that's looking for it is at exactly the same right time as the people who are sending it. Like, we're talking about such vast quantities of space. I'm a little bit confused as to why this bothers people.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that it bothers me. I guess I was just curious to, like, know your guys' position, since, like, I look up to you guys. Like, I think that you generally, like, give very great questions and, oppose very well to, like, organized religion. So I would like to know, like, a little bit more about what you guys think. I haven't seen, like, a caller, like, ask about it. I could have, like, searched specifically, like, for a cut, for, like, a short version, but I didn't search, so I waited for my
that's
my
fair.
call.
I don't have a video out on my position on Fermi paradox, so so this is the only way you're going to get it from me anyway.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. No,
really quick before I let you go, Luis, I pulled up the Drake equation here, and the actual full thing. This is by Frank Drake, an astrophysicist back in the 1960s. It is the number of technologically advanced civilizations in the Milky Way galaxy alone. So it's just looking at our galaxy. And that number is equal to the rate of formation of stars in the galaxy times the fraction of those stars with planetary systems times the number of planets per solar system with an environment suitable for life times the fraction of suitable planets on which life actually does appear times the fraction of life-bearing planets on which intelligent life emerges times the fraction of those civilizations that develop a technology that releases detectable signals into space telling of their existence times the length of time that those civilizations are releasing those signals. And so as you work your way down that equation, it's asking how certain is it that we would ever find other life just in this galaxy. And from the beginning of the equation to the end, it gets less and less and less and less and less certain as you go along. And it becomes like damn near impossible as you get to the end. So that's kind of the whole point of that. And when you expand that to the rest of the universe, it's very, very unlikely that we'll ever hear from each other. And that's fucking scary.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah. Anyway, I really appreciate you calling in, Luis. Please feel free to call back any other time if you have any questions for us.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
Good night. What a nice dude. Mostly nice callers today. Mostly nice people. I don't remember. We had 2 that were weird, but I think most of them were good. I actually don't remember how many we've done. Has it been 4? Has it actually been half and half? Who knows?
I think yeah, well, who's counting?
Right. We've got a couple more peeps here. Do you want to talk to... I'm looking at line 2, which isn't a theist line, but I think it's important to talk about.
Oh, are you?
If that's up your alley, or if that's something you want to save.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Let's talk to Paul, who's been waiting for an hour and a half anyway. Pronouns he, him, calling in from Canada. It says here apatheist, like apathy and atheist together. It's an interesting title. I think I know what it means, but it's cool.
I think that's the Aaron Raw thing, but we'll see.
Oh, is it? Okay, cool. Paul says that if belonging is more important than faith, then Coyne and Dawkins have made atheism just as unwelcome. I agree. Welcome to the line, Paul. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. You hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, perfect. It's good to speak with you both. Followed you. I keep being tempted to give someone a potato as a gift. Thanks to your inspiration, Forrest.
Hell yeah. How did it go? Did they love it?
I haven't done it. I keep thinking it's a good idea, though.
It is. You only think that because
I actually called. I called in last week with Paul and Shannon, and I essentially, I'll just sort of quickly recap so people sort of follow. Faith has like 3 principles: belief, belonging, and behavior. And I find a lot of the emphasis is on belief, understandably. But for someone like myself, I'm actually more of an atheist, but to be honest, I really don't care. Because the reason why I left the church had nothing to do with theological interpretations, right? I mean, even when I was part of the church, we didn't believe in creationism. We didn't believe in, so Big Bang, evolution. Even when I was in a church as a kid, that was perfectly okay. What turned me off was hypocrisy and, politics and other things of that nature. So what repels me is I'm more politically orientated, to be honest. So I look at, the sort of right-wing Christian nationalists and all that stuff, and it completely repels me. But on the flip side, I see progressive Christians, and we raised some of this in the last week, where I said United Church of Canada, Anglican Church of Canada, they're affirming of the LGBT community, they're not anti-abortion, all these things. So I'd be yeah, I could totally see myself belonging to those churches, even though I don't believe in God. And it really came to light for me, thinking about it afterwards, as to why I was thinking about this is, first of all, I've been thinking a lot about this after the U.S. election, where I've just been very disillusioned. because like, okay,
just
if
wait
people
for the
actually
Canadian
buy into
one.
this stuff.
The Canadian one's coming, and it's gonna be the same. Anyway, carry on.
Exactly, 100%. Like, it's like, Pierre Poilievre is just as bad as Trump. I wouldn't say he's as bad as Trump, but he's pretty bad. And so there's where I'm kind of disillusioned politically, and I feel a kinship with sort of progressive Christians. And so if I have to say, who do I align myself more with between, say, Raphael Warnock and Richard Dawkins, I'm going with Raphael Warnock, not Richard Dawkins, because I care more about who I align with than sort of believing in God. And I know the line has been very thing, so I just kind of see your perspective, but I just see like Dawkins and Coyne did a lot of damage to people like me who, like, I don't feel, if this is what you guys are about with atheism, then why should I align myself with you?
So the major issue that we face as a an atheist movement, if you will, right, is this kind of marketability and palatability among religious people. I think people like Dawkins and Coynes and Hitchens and all these people that are these vitriolic, outspoken atheists that are ready to rally against religion do a lot of good, because religion is harmful by its very existence. It does harm. And so arguing against it and at least getting that conversation to be normalized is incredibly beneficial. We live in a world where for a long time, you're just not allowed to say anything negative about anybody's religion ever. And that has led to a lot of problems. And so I think the work that they do as anti-theists, as outspoken atheists, as debaters, even when it's kind of distasteful, even when it's pretty aggressive, is a net positive. I think, the biggest issue we have is when you do those jobs for a long time and you sometimes act like an asshole because you hear the same question 1,000 times and it gets a little fucking annoying. I've been an asshole on some calls where I shouldn't have been. It just comes with the job because we're humans. And also specifically with Coyne and Dawkins, because those are the ones on your call screen here, specifically when you then also rope in a whole bunch of hate mongering and shitty hate speech against people that need the help of the secular community and should be protected by the skeptic community. And you push those people out and behave as fundamentalist religious people because this goes against your personal preferences and sensibilities, despite what the evidence says and despite what skepticism would lead you to do and to believe. That's an issue for me. And that pushes people out and does a lot more harm than just criticizing religion ever could. So that's the thing for me. I think we can get better role models as atheists, and I think we can get better poster boys, better speakers, better figureheads. That's the word I was looking for. As a skeptic and secular movement than those people. We're spoiled for choice. There's a lot of really, really, really great atheists and skeptics and speakers out there that are doing great work that don't have the same problematic tendencies. Paul, do you think anything different?
Well, the other problem we have is that atheism is the answer to one question, right? Mm-hmm. And it comes with nothing else. So we don't need to have any. As I recall your call from last week, my problem with you is that you were willing to go along with utility of an idea, where I care first about the truth of value of the idea, and then we can talk about the utility of the idea. And I'm hearing that in your pitch as well, that you have particular goals, and when belief systems that are, you don't believe what they believe, but if they have some of those same goals, you're wanting to rally together, and that's fine, because that's how you would achieve those specific goals. And I'm not even saying I have problems with those goals. The thing about atheism is atheism doesn't try to have utility, right? Like it doesn't have it. Actually, the only thing you get out of atheism is intellectual honesty. And that's not always helpful even, right? So again, I'm sorry that some people are making the answer to that one question seem unpalpable, but I mean, imagine if you went around and you publicized I'm left-handed. And you went around and you said, you know what? There's a lot of left-handed people with some shitty ideas. So, Paul, you're associated with those left-handed people, and man, those left-handed people with bad ideas are making left-handed people look really bad. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to do about that, because all we're aligned with is this one little tiny sliver of a thing. And so I guess maybe other people are expecting more out of atheism than I am, because it's really just the answer to one question. If you wanted to say, well, you know what, secular humanism has this problem, or some of these other organizing principles may have these problems, then that's more we're talking about. Or, in Canada, you want to say, oh, well, I'm trying to align with the NDP, but the NDP have these problematic areas. That's a thing we can actually talk about, because those are collections. Those are groups that have collections of ideas. Whereas just atheists, I get it. Some people who agree with me on that one God question disagree with me on other stuff. I wish that wasn't the case. I think we all wish everyone agreed with us. But there's not really much to be done, I don't think. If we want to add utility to people's lives, atheism specifically isn't the way to do that.
Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying, and here's where I guess I have a problem with the truth argument. And to be totally fair, I didn't have any negative repercussions from leaving the church, right? Like, I didn't have any family, trying to woo me back, and all this other negative repercussions a lot of other people have. So, like, I've, people who have, trauma from leaving the church, I totally get it, right?
Or from being in it, yes.
Or being in it, exactly, right? Yeah, so, like, I'm coming from a privileged position, which I'll acknowledge. But with regards to the truth perspective, here's where, like, the God of the gaps is a bit of is kind of an interesting thing. Like, you can't say we don't know something, therefore God, right? Like, that's what God of the gaps is. But the truth is, there are things that we don't know, and therefore we can't disprove God either, right? Depending on your definition, right?
He's not
like, maybe there is
generally
something out there. Yeah, it's exactly. It's unfalsifiable. So atheism doesn't purport that, right? Atheism just says, I don't believe God. It doesn't say there is no God. I guess there's where I'm saying you can't say, people believing in God, they're not true, right? Because we can't prove that they're wrong. Unlike, you raised the example last week of, like, the flat Earth. Well, we have pictures from space. We know the world is not flat, right? We have proof, but we can't prove there is no God.
Yeah, okay. So my flat Earth analogy from last week may not be as directly related this week to what we're talking about, but I mean, and I won't speak for Forrest here, but for myself, when people who accept things based on the kind of reasons that religious people accept, their epistemology of a religious person to come to accept their religious belief bleeds over to other areas of their lives. And I think there is harm in just merely utilizing that epistemology, even in one part of your life. Other people are free to not think it's as big a deal as I do. I think it's a big deal because I tend to witness it bleeding over into other areas.
And I feel the same way. That's why I always say, if somebody can make you believe absurdities, they can make you believe commit atrocities, and that's why I am so outspoken about this stuff, because it's not just benign. It's not just a matter of opinion. It's not just about a matter of belief. It's a matter of belief system. It's a matter of what you allow yourself to believe. It's a matter of how you go about believing things. It's a matter of what bullshit you allow into your life and into your mind. And it's a matter of not just like ideas. It's a matter of ideals. And that's a big difference to me. So I agree with Paul wholeheartedly.
No, that's not to discount.
That's fair. I guess where I differ, I'll just leave it at this. But where I differ is I don't see it as entirely negative. I recognize the harm. I recognize how it can be harmful.
Nope.
But I don't.
Nobody said it's entirely negative.
Negative by default.
Right. Nobody said it's entirely negative. The issue is that it is more negative than positive, and the potential negatives far outweigh any potential positives. So, like, there is not a single good thing that you can get from religion that you can't also get outside of religion without the baggage and the trauma and the terror that comes along with religious belief.
I slightly disagree, but that's fair. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thanks for your time.
Okay.
Take care, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye. Dude was waiting for a long time. I'm glad we got through it because it was still a good conversation. We've got. Let's talk to. What it says? Oh, I see. Okay, never mind. Let's talk to Jonathan. Pronouns he, him.
Let's do.
Calling in from Clicking Ants. Little tiny dudes. I don't know why. Who says the global flood was a very real thing. Jonathan, you are on the line with Forrest and Paul. How are you doing? Oh, wait. Hold on. No, you're not. Wait a second. Now you are. Hey, John, you're on the line with Forrest and Paul. How are you doing? Hello.
I'm doing great. How are you?
Never had a bad day.
That's great. Hey, I just wanted to let you guys know that there's evidence of a global flood all over the world.
Okay, and I strongly disagree.
Google,
I'm excited to hear it.
That's what I expected. Yeah, so have you heard of the term underfit stream?
No.
So an underfit stream is a stream that today is much smaller than the river channel it sits in. So actually every single stream in the world is an underfit stream because the river banks are much larger than it. So if you look at the Mississippi River, for example, the river, if you go onto an elevation map, the river banks are 110 miles wide. So that means it's a simple erosional fact that the Mississippi River used to be 110 miles wide. You look at the Missouri River was 70 miles wide. A small river right next to it called the James River was also 70 miles wide. Huh?
So I'm not a geologist, but from what I remember from this is that like you can have like meander scars and like traces of the river as it kind of moves and weaves and whatnot, and that can actually end up as the river moves, as it going in one direction, something happens along one side, an animal burrow, a tree grows, something like that weakens one side, and then the water is going to be hitting that side and it's going to be eroding differentially, and then that's going to cause more erosion. Right. And so over time, the river is going to start to curve in that direction. That's why you get rivers that wind, and as they continue to wind further and further and further, they eventually loop back on themselves. You just get a particularly wide area. Also, erosion running down into the river in a particularly flat area, if it's like a floodplain, is going to widen the banks of the river well past what the river normally is. Wet versus dry season is going to do that as well. Here in Tulsa, we have the Arkansas River, which usually looks like just a little trickle of brown sewage along like this mile-wide stretch of potential river. All of these things just point to natural erosion factors that happen with any kind of river. It doesn't necessarily mean that this river was at one point insane and is now tiny. That doesn't really track.
Okay, let me explain to you. There's a lot of specific details that makes that theory not correct. Primarily, if you look at the river banks, the river channels, they're not meandering. Like, for example, the big river banks, they're not like they have a bunch of little curves in it from like Oxbow Lakes and stuff like that. They're big straight channels, and a fast-moving river makes a straight channel. A slow meandering river over the course of time would make, if your theory was correct, these river banks I'm talking about would have a bunch of divots in them, and they wouldn't be nice straight lines. Another huge reason is river terraces.
Hold on, Jonathan, you're
okay.
Jonathan.
Okay, yeah.
I don't want you to move on to point number 2 until we talk about point number 1.
All right, yeah. That's
Have you heard of glaciers?
I've heard of them. Have you heard of the equatorial region? Because they're covered in massive river channels.
Do you know that what's on the equator now wasn't always on the equator?
That's also true.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah, I guess you could say that, but you're really kind of dodging the evidence when all of the rivers in the world are massive river channels.
No. You're also weirdly assuming that rivers always have the same level of flow that they have now, which is definitely not true. A lot of creationist arguments tend to not counting things as clocks that are clocks and thinking things that are not clocks are clocks. The rate at which a river flows flowing today is absolutely unrelated to the rate at which that river flowed 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago. So this is entirely...
Yeah, that's my point.
Here's the thing. I'm not a geologist. I find geology a little bit boring, but I still do geology videos, and I invite geologists on when I do that. Here's the thing. Now, the arguments you're presenting now, and because I've heard them, are not impressive to people who study this for a living.
Okay, well, if you watch my YouTube videos, I guarantee you'll find them impressive. I have a channel called Erosion of Earth.
I'm not going to watch your YouTube videos, and I don't appreciate you promoting your channel on our thing. What I'm telling you is that, like, even if what you were saying is true, like, let's assume that we have some reason to believe that there's a lot more water in these things for some reason, the rest of the concept of a global flood does not line up with the world we see around us.
Okay.
So even if I grant you, if I say I have no idea how rivers work at all, I have nothing to say, I cannot combat your point whatsoever. What I do know is biology, and nothing about biology tells us that there was a global flood. Also, the rest of the reality of what a global flood would look like isn't something that we would see around us. So, like, even if you have this river thing, that's not a lot to go off of.
Right. So, can you try to be a little bit open-minded here and just accept some evidence and at least consider evidence? That's
why we have the calls.
Well, no, hold on. I absolutely considered your straight rivers.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I'm saying the geologist answer that these are generally caused those ones are generally caused by glaciers seems to me the layperson. You're saying no, that's fine, but you gave me a thing, and I see another explanation for the thing, and the other explanation seems more in line. So that's not me being close-minded.
Can I move to point number 2 then?
But that's fine. But I don't want you to accuse me of being not open-minded just because I didn't agree with you.
I'm not accusing you. I just want you to at least consider. So if you look at the yellow river,
so I'm not impressed with point 1. Yep.
Here's point 2. If you go to Google Earth, you go to the Yellow River in China, you look at their riverbanks, they have massive riverbanks that's my previous point, is that they're 40 miles wide and stuff. But here's the thing. These rivers terrace the landscape. So you have massive areas that are perfectly flat, perfect for farming. They didn't get that way from glaciers. Glaciers rut out the terrain and make moraines and all sorts of things, kettle lakes. These are perfectly flat. This is what marine terraces look like. But these are river terraces, and you have massive amounts of land perfectly terraced, and you can see sections where the river decreased. So you have sections where it's 40 miles wide, then you have another section where it's 15 miles wide, and then the tiny section now today where it's only 1 mile wide. So to me, when I look at that, that looks exactly like a small river that decreased very quickly, and that's exactly what would happen if you expected a global flood.
Okay, but what about the rest of, what about there not being a flood is entirely unexpected by a river that decreased over time?
Can you say that again? I don't understand.
So you just told me that, let me say, hey, yeah, that's right. There was a river that used to be fast and is now slow.
No, not fast, 40 miles wide.
Fine. Okay, there's a river that was wide and now it's narrow. What?
That tells
Why
you that
should
there
I-
was massive drainage off of the continents. If you pull up Google Earth,
but hold on,
let me just say,
do you think that other geologists deny that there has been drainage on the world in the billions of years that they think that the planet has been here?
I don't know. But I'm just saying that
You don't wait.
Used
You
to be
don't
100-mile wide river. That's not impressive to you,
Jonathan.
No.
You don't know the best answer against your position. You have not
I
looked
hope
up.
you could tell me.
I
What,
am
you
not
gonna
a
say
geologist.
glaciers
Forrest
and
is not a
ice sheets?
geologist.
Ice are nonsense.
I would never call into a show and say the reason I believe something is X without at least having looked up what the experts in the world say about
that
X.
thing. See, here's the thing, Jonathan, is like a minute ago, I told
guarantee
you, like,
whatever
I'm
you're going
willing
to say
grant.
is going to be nonsense. So just say it already, man.
What
What's
a
your
weird
point?
thing to say to somebody you're having a conversation with. So, Jonathan, a minute ago, what's frustrating to me is that I told you, listen, I'm not a geologist. Paul's not a geologist. If we assume everything you're saying about rivers is true, I don't know anything about rivers at all. I can't talk about rivers. The rest of the evidence points against a flood. And you said, okay, I'll move on to my next point. Here's this fucking river. And like, I don't get why that's so relevant to you. I promise you, geologists know that rivers exist. And as Paul was saying, the geologists that he does talk to understand the evidence you're talking about and don't think that it points to a flood. So now we've got you saying that rivers say flood, geologists saying rivers don't say flood. We can set rivers aside. We're 1 for 1 on it between Jonathan and people who know what they're talking about. Let's move on to something different, because the shit that I actually do have expertise in, I can tell you all points against a global flood. Do you have anything besides rivers to go off of?
How about massive ripples all over the world that have wavelengths of multiple miles?
Ripples in what?
You know what a ripple is? It's made out of sediment and stuff. So here's the thing.
So
you go to Google Earth
ripples in
and
rock layers?
You go to the sediment. You go to the west coast of Africa. Go to a country called, I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, Mauritania.
No, hold on. Jonathan, I will listen to this. Jonathan, I will listen to you describe this. Hold on. I will listen to you describe this if you first tell me how scientists explain what you're going to tell us. First tell me what the scientists say, and then you can describe it to me in the way you interpret it.
I haven't heard scientists talk about it. I assume they would say it's wind caused.
So you assume. No. So, Jonathan, have you ever received any training whatsoever in geology?
I took a handful of classes at a UC. I was going to get a minor in it, but I didn't actually pursue it.
When you took some geology classes at university, did they talk about any of this stuff at all?
No, they only talked about boring stuff.
Okay. Do you still have any of your old geology textbooks?
I have geology textbooks, yes.
What do those textbooks say is the cause of these ripples?
They do not mention them. All the interesting stuff they don't mention.
Okay, so then you have a question. There's something you don't understand. The vast majority of evidence, in fact, I'm not even going to say the vast majority, all of the scientific evidence points away from a global flood. And you have this thing, you're like, I don't understand this, and it kind of looks floody to me, and I don't have a resource on it. What can you do to find out whether or not those things actually do point to a flood, or if that's just kind of your best guess? What can you do to learn more about this?
I'll tell you exactly what I do. I study the I study river systems, I study fluid dynamics, and I look at real world evidence. And the great thing about fluid dynamics is you can see things on the small scale that are exactly the same as the mega scale. So ripples that are 2 inches long are the same as the ones that are 1.5 miles long.
Go watch my video on Ark in the Darkness. I fucking covered this.
You already have? What's it called?
Go watch my video on the Ark in the Darkness movie.
They talk about mega scale ripples?
They do. In fact, they do.
Oh, wow.
And in fact,
you want to see the ones in Afghanistan that are 2 miles wide?
I don't remember which
the ones
countries.
In Pakistan.
I don't remember which countries.
You can see them in Australia. You can see
I'm just curious.
Massive salt tablands.
Jonathan, do you think that they're like, when we look at across like sciences, like we can look at like what percentage of scientists are religious? And it tends to be that the more sciencey a person gets, the less religion they get. And the least religious types of scientists are like evolutionary biologists, a lot of chemists, a lot of physicists, especially cosmologists. You're talking about a global flood.
I'm talking about
you're talking about a global flood, which is a Bible thing, and you're also calling in as a theist. My question to you is: Do you think that when we ask people about whether or not there's a global flood, that like all the physicists are saying no, and all the biologists are saying no, and then there's this spike in potamologists that are like, fuck yeah. And then the rest of us are just like, no, like, why is that? Do you not understand what I'm getting at here?
So, yeah, I see what you're doing. You're not answering any of my questions. You're avoiding them because you're afraid of them. You're afraid to answer any of my questions. You're afraid to look at Google Earth.
Jonathan, be serious for a second. Paul and I have both grappled with your points and also admitted what we don't know. You are the one with no actual training in this area who is saying that you know better than all the potamologists and all the geologists out there who actually study this shit for a living. You know something they don't, despite the fact that you dropped out of getting a minor in something. Potamologists don't study rivers.
Listen,
what
don't
do they study
things. Listen, I'm sure there's people that study rivers, but the whole time
they're called potamologists.
Their mind is completely their mind is completely controlled by the paradigm of uniformitarianism, and they never get to look at it with an open mindset.
Paul and me with the fucking paradigms.
And consider catastrophism. Catastrophism should be seriously considered.
Right. Except for the fact that there is no scientific evidence supporting it. So here's the thing. Like I said, I'm a biologist. That's where my background's coming from, right? And when I look at life on this planet, it is not possible to have the kind of life that we have today if we also factor in a biblical flood, like Noah's flood type. That doesn't make any sense. And so the evidence in front of us, not only the impossibility of the flood, but the strong evidence of like what's actually on the ground tells us that there was no such thing. So my field of study says there's no flood.
Sure.
Geology says there's no flood. Like potamology says there's no flood. Limnology says there's no flood, right? We have all these different things factoring in here that says this doesn't make any damn sense. And we're basing that on the actual evidence in front of us. The catastrophism just doesn't stack up, doesn't hold any water. Isn't that a fun thing to say?
Well, we both view the same evidence. We just interpret it differently.
I don't think we do. I don't think we view the same evidence. I don't think you have a good grounding in what the evidence is. I think that you have looked at Google Earth and come up with some ideas.
We can talk about the fossil record then. We can talk about the fossil record if that's more of your... So, you know what's interesting is every of the early species are all underwater. All of the earliest fish are deep sea fish. All of the earliest organisms are deep sea organisms. Then you move up to get amphibians. Then you get to land. So then you get trees. That's why trees are supposedly older than fish or than sharks. Right? So don't you
trees
see
are older than sharks,
how
not
everything...
fish.
Okay, yeah, sharks, not fish. So you could view that, you've already viewed it your way. You could also view it as, we already know that for anything to become fossilized, it has to be rapidly buried. We can agree on that.
Correct.
You can then look at the fossil record and say, okay, everything in this fossil record has been rapidly buried. Well, if there was a global flood, then we would view the oldest, the deep sea animals as the oldest, and then from there we would go upwards. And that's exactly what we find with something like the probably pronouncing this wrong, coelacanth, that fish that hasn't changed at all in all those years.
Yeah, just coelacanth.
Yeah, so that's supposedly
here's
super
the issue.
old, but that's a deep sea fish. So if it was buried rapidly, you know what I'm saying?
No, here's the issue with what you're saying, is that it's not just about where these things are, it's also level of complexity, and it's also the complete, like, non-mixing of these things. If there was a global flood, let me ask you this. When was this global flood, supposedly?
I'm not going to pretend to know.
Were humans around when this global flood happened that you think of?
Yes.
Okay, so then why...
You ever heard of the Guadalupe woman?
This is catastrophic, right? It's a catastrophism. It is catastrophic in nature. Why in this immense catastrophe do we not find one single human fossil that sank to the bottom of this ocean, that's mixed in with the dinosaurs? Not a single T-Rex up here with us. We don't find hallucinogena up here along these guys. Why are they in such uniform layers with only each kind of thing in its layer? I'm using the word kind here, which I hate, but it's...
Okay, so first of all, you get layers from settling. So when things settle out, they settle out into layers. But to answer your first
question... Why do all the dinosaurs find the same layer?
So the dinosaurs, because they're land animals, so they're going to be on land. And the reason why they're in layers, they're not just in layers. If you look at how they're fossilized, they're in graded beds. They're disarticulated. They're ripped apart in a catastrophic way.
You're not answering my question.
Not the ones in Alberta, but carry on.
Yeah, I was going to say there's plenty of dinosaurs that are not disarticulated, but that's not the point. You're not answering my question. Why is it that when we look at the sedimentary layers, when we look at the layers between 250 million years old and 65 million years old, that's the place where we find all of these big dinosaurs, and we don't find them below that, and we don't find them above that, and we don't find a single human that could have made their way down in there. Not once, and all the humans in the world drowned at the same time the dinosaurs drowned. Not a single one of them drowned at the same time. Not a single one of them fell down amongst the T-Rexes. Why?
That's not true. You ever heard of the Guadalupe woman?
Where do we find humans mixed in with dinosaurs?
There's also the Moabite man in Utah, who has been found in the strata in Utah. But what I was saying is the best evidence is the Guadalupe woman, who is found in limestone on Guadalupe Island, and she is preserved everything except for her head and her feet, and she's stored in the British Museum. And there was also a male hand found in the same area.
But when do they date the Guadalupe woman to? When do they date it to?
I think it was like 28 million years old or something.
No, it's like from the 1800s.
Well, that's when they found it.
That's where it was dated. Also, like, different types of rock. The question is, are you saying this is a person who was found fossilized next to dinosaur fossils? Is that what you're saying?
Is that what you're claiming?
No, I'm saying she was found fossilized in limestone, and limestone doesn't accumulate on the seafloor anymore. So that only happened
Again, you're not answering my question then. My question is,
why
is it?
No, there hasn't been a human mixed in with fossils, but there has been human fossil footprints mixed in with dinosaur footprints in Paulogia, Texas.
No.
But you're going to dispute that.
My question remains, because you still haven't answered it. My question remains, why, if this flood happened and drowned everything in the world all at once, including humans and dinosaurs at the same time, do we not find a single fossil that is in the wrong layer? Why don't we find a human fossil next to a T-Rex fossil, or vice versa, or in the same layer as those things?
Or a cow, or a rabbit, or a horse.
Yes, exactly. Or something from below. Why don't we find a Dimetrodon fossil up where the dinosaurs are? Or some sort of Eoraptor down next to the Gorgonopsid? Why don't we find any of these layers with any kind of intermingling at all?
That's a good question. I think that to some degree there's a lot of out of place fossils, but I'm sure you're going to just wave them away.
Where?
I mean, you can look in coal beds fossils? And find crazy things. You can find human artifacts in coal beds that are supposedly millions and millions of years.
Those are not fossils.
Okay.
You said there were lots of out of place fossils. Ken Ham couldn't come up with a single one, by the way, when he was debating Bill Nye.
Yeah, the guy who does this for a living.
So, I mean,
Ken Ham
I said the
Paluxy
River track. Have you heard of
but those are not fossils. Yes, I have.
Those are trace fossils. Those are...
Yeah, so trace fossils are a type of fossil.
No, they're not clear. They're not clearly humans or clearly dinosaurs. So that's not.
Okay, let me just say this then. Let's talk about the Guadalupe woman in limestone. Why is it that when I go to the beach, I never find limestone debris on the beach accumulating on the seafloor?
I'm 99% sure we've spoken before. This is all sounding more and more familiar, and I'm pretty sure you posted this shit. You've posted this shit somewhere.
Scripts. This is creation.com has this article on Guadalupe.
Is that what it is? Okay, because I swear I've talked to this exact same argument, and it meant the exact same nothing before. So like, this is the thing, man, is that like the people who actually study this for a living say that this doesn't hold water at all, and the people who are trying like hell to prove the Bible is true don't have any way to confirm any of this stuff, and don't have anything that supports this. And what's more important is if we're talking about this global flood, it's not just the fossil record that disproves this. It's also like, or actually to stay on the fossil record, we don't find anything out of place in that. We also don't find this evidence of animals moving away from Mount Atarak or whatever the fuck it is that Noah's Ark supposedly settled on. We don't find that. We don't find a break in the fossil record suddenly when the world was supposedly being repopulated. Ararat, that's the one.
Great unconformity.
It doesn't make any sense to say that all these plants were underwater for over a year, as long as this flood was supposed to be. That doesn't make any sense. Freshwater or saltwater animals would have died in this, one or the other. If it's all freshwater being rained down, the saltwater things are going to die. If it's all saltwater building up because of the fountains of the Great Deep or whatever, the freshwater thing's going to die. We don't see anything like that. Like we see whale fossils that are fossilized at the same time. Why are swimming things being fossilized in a flood? How are fossilized swimming things dying at the same rate and at the same level of like increasing complexity as like land animals at the same time? This doesn't make any sense. What does make sense is that like radiometric dating works, and we have like both relative and absolute dating methods that are pointing in a different direction. Like this just doesn't mean anything. It's just conjecture trying to make the evidence that we have fit into a box that it doesn't fit into.
Radiometric dating is not statistically significant in a 90% confidence level.
Then why is it the major cornerstone, like the thing that holds the entire fossil fuel industry together?
What do you mean?
I mean that when fossil fuel companies are looking for places to dig for oil and shit, they use radiometric dating to make predictions, to go do that, to spend money appropriately so they don't waste millions of dollars building oil rigs in random fucking places trying to find oil, hopefully someday. They need to know what carboniferous rock looks like, and they look for that, and then they go and drill there. The entire fossil fuel industry is held up by radiometric dating.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of other factors at play that help them find oil.
So you think they just do it for fun? You think that these major multi-billion-dollar corporations are just fucking around?
Things. No, they use several different things to find it. There's a difference between correlation and causation.
Right. Several different things finding the same stuff is why we know these dating methods work, because they inform each other. Radiometric dating isn't done by itself. You test several different radioisotopes that all point in the same direction, and you also have other absolute dating methods and also some relative dating methods that can all point in the same direction, and indeed they do. So, like, you don't just check argon, you're also going to go check, potassium, you're also going to check for uranium, you're also going to check for whatever else. And you can come along with fission track dating, with potassium, with dendrochronology, with thermoluminescence, with like a lot of other things that can all point in the same direction. There's lots of different types of dating methods out there, and not a single one of them says the Earth is 6,000 years old and there was a global flood.
When they use potassium, argon dating, and a whole bunch of other different.
If you talk about a mammoth,
lead, whatever.
I swear to God,
they mammoth. No. When they use multiple datings, they don't line up exactly. They don't line up. For example, with Mount St. Helens eruption, they were off by over 100%.
Those
with different
methods.
Weren't. So then, how would you even?
They weren't.
All that.
That is a very commonly quoted creationist talking point. That bullshit study was done by a bullshit creationist doing radiometric dating wrong. That's what usually happens. Is that creationists say that radiometric dating doesn't work until a creationist does radiometric dating, gets the wrong answer, and then says, see, the Earth is actually quite young because I proved it with this bullshit. No, the Mount St. Helens things is like just regurgitated bullshit. The thing is, no, they don't always point to exactly the same date. That's why there's error bars. That's why we show it's between this range. So, like,
I think that the percentage error is much longer than they'd like to admit.
It's not, and that's the whole thing about replicability in science. It's not. Why don't you explain to me what radiometric dating is looking for?
I didn't come on here to talk about radiometric dating. I came on here to talk about erosion. And,
can we talk about
everything that
can we talk about the Guadalupe skeleton
is
for a
ice
sec?
erosion.
Can we talk about the Guadalupe skeleton for a sec?
Sure,
please.
Sure, ask a question.
So because I knew I'd heard it before, and I wrongly said the 1800s. So that the Guadalupe skeleton, they date to roughly 4,000 years ago, which is entirely unsurprising to find a human from 4,000 years ago. We're no one surprised by that. The limestone, which the skeleton was formed under shallow marine and beach conditions, is typical on that island and still happens. It doesn't happen in deep sea conditions very well.
At all.
Okay. I'm reading to you what scientists tell us. So you telling me the opposite. This has not impressed anyone who isn't a creationist.
Okay. So if you look at the limestone you find today in Caribbean islands and stuff, what you find is macroscopic crushed shells. Okay? That's not the real limestone debris. Real limestone is made of the skeletons of diatoms. Okay?
You don't understand,
that there
Paul.
is no way
it's not limestone, it's real limestone.
Right.
Look,
the real limestone is
my problem with you, Jonathan, is the same problem I had. Do you know, Jonathan, do you know that I believed everything you believe 8 years ago? 8 years ago, I would have called onto this show and made the same points you are making now.
I'm making a scientific point. I'm not making a religious point here. I'm trying to explain to you limestone.
Jonathan, that does not matter. I am telling you, I would have called in with the very same points. And I made the same mistake that I think you are making. And that is you have spent zero time looking at the evidence against what you are saying. I don't care what point you're making about. I don't care if you're making a point about science or politics or you name it, or interior decorating. It doesn't matter. If you don't have a clue what someone who has the opposite opinion of you would say, you haven't done any research yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not true.
And you
so
don't
can I finish
know.
making my point?
No, because you can't tell me what the opposite point is. And this is why I'm saying you have not, I can't respect
You
that
can
you have
say
done
the
actual
opposite
research.
point once I state my point, but you won't even let me finish my
No,
argument.
Jonathan, the point isn't that there is one. The point is that you have spent zero time looking it up. So
how do you know what I've done?
Because I've asked you, and you've literally said no. I'm taking you at your word,
so,
Jonathan. Are you lying to me?
Microscopic diatoms. Listen.
No, no.
Diatoms.
Jonathan, we're not talking. We don't care about that. We care about the point that you are not. You don't know what the counter is, and I don't even care if the counter is silly and ridiculous and stupid. You haven't spent any time researching it.
The counter argument is uniformitarianism every time. The counter argument is uniformitarianism every time.
And you know that there are catastrophes that happen within uniformitarianism, right? You know that volcanoes happen and that floods happen and that all those things happen. So in evidence of individual catastrophes does nothing to tell us. Do you think that the asteroid that hit the Earth was a small scale catastrophe?
You're talking about Chicxulub?
The Chicxulub at the Yucatan?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a volcanic pipe, actually.
Oh, you don't think it was even? Where did all of that iridium come from? If it was a volcanic pipe.
Okay, there were massive layers of iridium before that, but they were just considered that they were trapped from the global ice sheet because they believe in snowball Earth, not water ball Earth. So you have these massive layers of iridium that aren't. No. Before the Chicxulub, they say there's massive layers of uridium in the strata because a bunch of small meteorites came in, had their uridium, but they were all blocked off by the global ice sheet. And then once that melted, it went into the strata.
So you are talking about multiple catastrophes.
Yeah, turns out. Yeah, like here's the thing, man. It's just
that's not my point. I know what the alternate argument is, which you think I don't know.
You were talking. No, that's not.
That's not right. Also, I want to throw out PhD Tony. Thank you for the $10. Sent in a super chat to point out, just adding on to the other ones that I was saying: radiometric dating, cosmogenic exposure dating, dendrochronology, VARV chronology, ice core chronology, luminescence dating, electron spin resonance. I had forgotten that one existed. Amino acid racemization, all back each other up. These are all different, like absolute dating methods that, like, tell one from the they all point in the same direction. Like I said, absolute dating methods and relative dating methods. It's not like we're just looking at this with our lens of evolutionism and saying this fossil's in a 60 million year old rock, and we know that rock is 60 million years old because it's got a 60 million year old fossil in it, right? It's not anything like that. Like, we have various different things that are all pointing in the same direction. And you're sitting here saying, well, this one's unreliable. Okay, even if I agree with you, which I super don't, we have a bunch of other ones that are also all pointing in the same direction. And again, can't stress enough, none of this points to a global flood, especially not one like what it says in the Bible, where we have humans involved. It's all very recent, all this stuff. Like, there's no evidence for that. And the evidence that we do have doesn't point in that direction. The fossil record as we know it, even after when you say the flood is, the post-diluvial fossil record doesn't support a global flood. So, like, and that's not even just that, just basic laws of nature. Understanding how long it takes for ecosystems to develop doesn't support the time scale that a flood gives it. If we had a flood like the biblical flood, where you have all of a sudden you only have one type of proboscidean species, right? One type of elephant. And now we have to get all these other elephants from the same time. I actually calculated this on the last video that I did about the flood on my channel. You would need every single generation of elephants to be a new species with totally new morphology. So literally every elephant that is born is a different species from its mother, which was a different species from its grandmother, which is a different species from its grandmother. And they all looked completely different as well. So, like, even just looking at, like, if we say, yeah, we're going to say this is a flood. everything past that makes no fucking sense. There is absolutely nothing backing up your claims besides you, who has not had any training in this, saying that all the people who do have training in this are blinded by their worldview. And if they just looked at Google Earth, they'd understand what Jonathan knows. And that's an incredibly arrogant claim. And I don't get how you're getting so spicy with us for just giving it the level of respect that you're giving real science.
Well, I think that anybody can discover something. We're all
but they
human,
need evidence for it, and you don't have any.
Yeah, and my evidence is on Google Earth. Go to the west.
Fuck, man.
Just look at North Africa and tell me there wasn't a global flood.
No,
There's massive
evidence.
drumlins, massive ripples. Look at Australia.
Hold on a second. Just wait. Wait a second. Hold on a second. I'm doing a thing.
Yeah.
Give me a second. I'm doing a thing. I'm going to help you out. I am going to Google Earth, and I am zooming out. Oh, my fuck, dude. Just be the thing. Do the job that you're supposed to do, you piece of shit. Go away. And I'm going to type in Africa. Africa. Oh, my glob. I cannot stand what this computer is doing right now. I'm going to lose my flipping mind. Africa. There we go. I am now looking at Africa. It is zooming over there. I'm in Africa. I'm looking at the west side of Africa, and I am telling you there is no global flood. I have done the thing you said. I looked at the west coast of Africa, and I'm telling you there's no global flood. Oh, no, hold on. I'm looking now at North Africa. I am now looking at North Africa. There's no global flood. I've now done it twice. I've done it on both of the things. Jonathan, I'm not going to let you. I'm going to just fucking, I'm so done with it, dude. Jonathan, it's been 40 minutes and you've given us nothing. You've given us some shit that you think might be evidence for a global flood, that actual scientists that study the things you say have reasonable explanations for, that are backed by real data and are testable, repeatable, verifiable, actually shit that they publish and critique, not just Jonathan, fucking got high and watched Google Earth too much. Like it's not worth the time, man. You're not being serious about this, and you're accusing us of intellectual dishonesty when you admitted you've never even checked to see if there's an explanation for this, and then changed your mind and said nobody knows anything about this more than you do. It's just not worth the time, man. It really, really isn't. Paul, do you have anything left for Jonathan?
Ark in the Darkness is a movie that agrees with you. So, but go watch Forrest's channel, go watch my channel, because we definitely talk about some of these claims in detail if you really care. But this isn't the time or place.
Yeah, I don't think he does really care. I'll be honest with you. It's just it's not holding up. My last video about it was the Ark video with Noah's Ark here. There we go. Ark Encounter, luxury mega yacht review. It was all about the terrible movie that Eric Hovind put out. So yeah, go check those out and tell us more about this. Or better yet, talk to a geologist or a limnologist or a potamologist or somebody who actually studies these things. Goodbye, Jonathan. Can't wait for Jonathan to put this call on his channel, talking about how he owned these evil atheists that couldn't even answer his questions and dodged and ran away from his question. It's going to be great. We got two more. Let's talk to Hans, pronouns he, him, calling in from Wailing Aliens. Wants to know if we have an issue with the pagan folk religion resurgence in Germany. Hans, you're on the line with Forrest and Paul. How are you doing today? Did Hans explode? What happened?
Hello?
Hans was whisked away.
Okay. I muted Hans.
Yeah,
let's.
I just dropped Hans. Yeah, if it's that, I'm not going to deal with it.
If that was a technical problem, we're sorry, Hans, but get that technology in order. If you were a troll call, later.
An hour and 3 minutes of his life for that.
It sounded to me like his voice changer malfunctioned, or that was all he called in to do, was just to make weird squeaky squirrel sounds.
I mean, that's
anyway, right? I mean, in fairness, Gesundheit to Hans, and now we move on to our next call. The last one of the show is Autumn, who's been on hold for 2 goddamn hours. Who pronouns she, her. Calling in from Moldy Dicks, is an atheist who wants to talk about issues and doubts about a moral system of utilitarianism. Autumn, you're on the line with Forrest and Paul. How are you doing today? Autumn, we can't hear you.
Oh, no, my bad. That's my fault. I muted because the last caller.
Do this.
Now you're good, Autumn. Go ahead.
Hello. I freaked out just a second there. Good to know that my mic is working. All right. So,
you talk about utilitarianism. Tell me about it.
Yeah. So I was raised at least as like a pretty liberal Protestant, but pretty quickly I sort of realized it didn't really make a lot of sense with the mythology. So I moved away from that. And I've pretty much been like an atheist for about 10 years. About 4 years ago, I sort of got into philosophy and discovered utilitarianism. And I sort of latched onto that. There's a lot of like sort of hypothetical problems with it. Like sort of the one where there's a person, there's like one healthy person, there's 5 people who need different organs, and you could like cut up the one person to save the 5 people. And I've got past like a lot of the ones like that, but there's this one issue that I'm stuck on, which is like you could achieve, theoretically at least, like maximum happiness for a person by just keeping them on like a psychoactive drug drip, or maybe in some sort of like Matrix like VR world.
Sure.
And like logically speaking, through my moral system, that almost seems like it would be the desirable outcome if that truly is the best, most happy state. But like intuitively, of course, that feels wrong. And the only defense I have when someone brings that up is, well, that's not maximum happiness, which feels like really weak and almost like sort of deflecting. So I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts on that.
Sure. Is happiness the end all be all goal of morality?
I guess that's that kind of strikes at the heart of my moral system, because I would say yes. I feel like saying whatever the goal is like inherently arbitrary, but I think happiness is the good thing to strive for. I kind of view it as sort of the meaning of, or at least one meaning of my life.
Whose happiness?
I would say of like moral agents in particular, but I guess to keep it simple, we can just say like human beings.
So then you're saying that you're trying to maximize happiness for the most amount of people possible, yeah?
Yeah. Yes.
And what if, take it away from a psychoactive dripping, whatever, take a real world example. This large group of people wants this small group of people dead. They would be more happy if more of these people over here died, and there's more of them than there are of the small group. Is genocide now moral?
I would say no. I would say that because like that genocide doesn't do anything to materially help the like large group of people, and
certainly it does.
Sure,
the large
does.
group
More
of people
resources.
now. Exactly. The large group now has more living space, and they have more resources, and they have all these free clothes and lots of tasty human meat and all sorts of things. And they feel superior, which makes them very happy.
That's true. I mean, I could argue against the feel superior, but at least in terms of the resource, like the conquering of resources, that is a pretty legitimate dilemma. I would say I kind of solved that in the same way as like the scenario I described with the 5 people who need organs, by introducing a little bit of like Kantian ethics by saying that you can't use people as a means. So I would say like you can't kill those small group of people for the purpose of like making the large group of people happier.
Okay,
using
then
them as
we
a
go
means.
to going to your analogy of talking about like, could we not have somebody on a psychoactive drip? The person controlling that drip is the means then.
Okay. Okay, but I guess that works for the psychoactive drip. But what about like a person who's, say, in like the Matrix, in some sort of VR fantasy land? You don't necessarily need a person to be the means for that.
Right. So if this thing isn't controlled by a person, then is it moral because the person in the simulation is happier?
Well, right. Like if the person is like somehow achieving their maximum happiness living in the VR world, is it then moral to just keep them like in the VR world? That is sort of the dilemma.
I wouldn't say so, but who knows?
Autumn, does your ethical system have any kind of time frame involved, or is it all just immediate?
I would say no. It definitely is considering like the future. So yeah, like I would say that like it's immoral to, for example, I don't know, like do methamphetamine, even if it makes you feel good in the moment. It's going to do more harm in the future.
Right. So
I disagree on that too.
Would you agree then that you have some flavor? You're using happiness, and I think it's weirding both of us out. Can we use the word flourishing? Does flourishing encompass what you would want to say?
Yeah, I think that
into flourishing.
Okay, so flourishing.
I think that works.
Would you agree? Would you agree that for a cooperative system, for social species like we have, that you require a balance both of group flourishing and individual flourishing? Or do you think that we can do one at the expense of the other? Okay, so so if you had a whole group,
different people require like a different balance, but I'd say like for the vast majority of people, they need some amount of balance.
I think you would agree that you wouldn't say that a whole country is happy when every individual in the country is unhappy, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And you also, just because there's a handful of people who are flourishing, that doesn't mean that the whole group is flourishing.
Right.
Okay.
Welcome to socialism.
So you would so in principle you agree.
Oh, don't worry, I'm already there.
Yeah, and so we're all actually in agreement on this call. So, but in principle, you would agree that there's always going to be push and pull against what an individual wants versus what the group needs, and that there's never going to be a perfect. On a macro scale, we're lucky because it kind of works itself out, right? When Germany goes a little bit crazy, the rest of the world goes, oh, whoa, hold on there. That maybe isn't on a macro scale. We're going to say, hey, you know what? Calm down. So that when you talk about an individual, like when you talk about an individual, is it good if that individual goes into a happiness coma? The answer is maybe that's good for that person. I think it's always good in ethics. At least I would teach my children. What would happen if when you're trying to make a moral decision, you sometimes need to think about what would happen if everyone did this. So, like, is it immoral for me to, steal bread to feed my family? Maybe not. But what if everyone just stole bread? How would that work? So you do need to sometimes take those little small decisions and make them larger, and it's all fuzzy and weird as far as I'm like it gets contentious because you have different people with different goals. So can we at least agree that a system of ethics based on what going to be good for an individual is unlikely to translate well?
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying, like that you have to consider not just like your own happiness and your own desires, but also like other people's, and that you need to consider, well, if I'm taking this action, is it okay for somebody else to do the same? And what happens if they do? I'm definitely with you there.
And then you also have to then cross that over time, right? You need to actually cross that over. What's 6 generations down the road going to be like if I take this action? If you want to get really advanced in your ethics, right?
Yeah.
So, there's lots of variables, and I don't remember what my point was, other than to say that if we're talking about that as a utilitarian, as a moral system, I don't think it works because I don't think it scales.
I'm also just not a utilitarian, so like I don't know, man. But like Yeah, I think there's a lot there, and like the fact of the matter is, like, you seem like a reasonable enough person, and so like there's gonna be different philosophies and different ideals and different schools of thought that are always going to try to get you to the right place. As long as you're trying to make humanity better and trying to make as many people happy and be as little of a dick as you possibly can be, I think you're on the right track. It just bothers me to try to say, well, it's all about maximal happiness, because there's lots of people that can be, it is demonstrated repeatedly throughout history that happiness does not mean justice. Happiness does not mean progress. Happiness does not mean good or moral in any real way. You can make somebody very happy by doing very evil things. And depending on how that person is raised and indoctrinated, they can be happy doing evil things too. You don't have to be a sociopath. You just have to be taught this group over here is lesser than, and you'll do fucking all sorts of shit. And so like, I don't think it's a good idea to base any moral system in a unitarian. I keep trying to call you Unitarian. Like as a utilitarian framework. I just don't think it's productive, and I think it's at risk of doing a slippery slope fallacy. It just leaves the door open for too much shit. But you're asking good questions, and I think you should continue doing so.
Okay, thank you both very much. Also, if I could ask, what are your moral systems, or just like, I guess, moral philosophies shortly, if I can look into them?
I don't know the name because I'm not a philosophy face. But I, philosophically speaking, like my jam, I really love cosmic nihilism and I really love ancient stoicism. And when you put those together, you get a framework that's all about personal responsibility and absurdity and acknowledging that nothing really matters. So you got to make the world what the best you can, because nobody else is going to do it. And thankless labor to better humanity. I don't know what that's called morally. I just think that it's the best way to be a good person. Also, I'm not a capitalist.
Yeah, I'm not a philosopher. I don't do all the philosophy labels. So mine currently, but it's always reconstructing itself. I think we should maximize flourishing and minimize suffering. And that I feel like the more beings that you include in your consideration, the more moral you are.
Yeah, it's long and short of it. Inclusivity is a big deal. All right, Autumn, I really appreciate you waiting so long to talk to us. I hope that what we said was useful or coherent.
Or entertaining or something.
Yeah, it's been really nice. I've been waiting
awesome.
Probably like 2 months off and on trying to call in. So it's been great talking to you too. Thank you very much.
Sorry you got us.
Thanks, Autumn.
Thanks so much, Autumn. Take care. Bye. She was fun. Blind Limey says Forrest, not a capitalist, has a merch shop. Fuck off. We all have to survive. Also, go buy some merch. I was over here giggling because she was talking about like meth and just, like the meth song. But meth gives you joy that only gods can experience, but don't do it. That's the meth song. Anyway, that was the show. You watched it, and you're enabling it, is what it is. By you tuning in, it's your fault that we're on. So I can't take all the blame. But Paul was also here for it. So thank you so much, Paul, for hanging out with me. Love hosting.
I enjoy it as always. Yep.
Thank you so much to the call screener, who was somebody today. I lost the call screen, but I'm
Stephanie Helms.
Stephanie
Helms. Thank you to Stephanie Helms. Thank you to Arden, our producer. Thank you to our mods in chat. Thank you to the other call screeners. Thank you to Fire Halo, who's already hard at work doing timestamps, I'm sure. Thank you to all of our chat people. Thank you to all of our viewers. Thank you to all of our callers, even the ones that suck. We'll see you next time. Have an awesome rest of your day. Never stop learning. Bye.